There is a moment inside an RV when you stop feeling hidden. The curtains are closed, the door is locked, the campground is quiet. But one light, one mirror, one camera, or one wrong angle can make the whole rig feel like glass. Tonight, these are 7 RV camping stories from people who realized they were visible long before they knew who was watching. Comment your time and where you're watching from. And if you notice which detail comes back later, remember it. The first thing wrong with that RV site was not outside. It was the curtain. I had been on the road most of that day, coming down through northern Wisconsin in light rain, trying to reach the campground before the office closed. It was one of those lakefront RV parks that looked safe in a boring way. Gravel loops, white hookup posts, a little check-in window with a plastic owl on the roof, a row of older fifth wheels near the trees with blue tarps over the firewood. I liked places like that because nothing about them asked for attention. The woman at the office gave me Site 14, circled it on a paper map, and told me the gate locked at 10. She said if I needed to leave after that, I would have to call the emergency number taped to the office door. I remember nodding like that was normal. At the time, it was. My site was near the back loop, not isolated, but quiet enough. There was a Class C motorhome 2 spaces down with its porch light on, and an empty pull-through across from me. I backed in on the second try. Got the rig mostly level with 2 yellow blocks under the rear tire, plugged into shore power, and hooked up water. I did not bother with the sewer hose yet. I was tired, and it was raining just enough to make every outside task annoying. Inside, the RV felt better. Warm, small, familiar. I locked the door, checked both cab doors, and pulled the curtains across the windshield and side windows. The passenger side curtain always dragged a little on the rail, so I gave it an extra tug until the 2 panels overlapped. Then I made coffee, which was stupid because it was already late, and stood at the tiny counter, waiting for the kettle to heat. That was when I noticed the curtain had opened. Not a lot. Not blown wide or hanging loose. It had opened in a straight, narrow gap about 2 inches wide, right at the passenger side window. The kind of gap you would leave if you wanted to peek out without being seen. I stared at it for a few seconds, then pulled it closed again. The RV shifted slightly under my feet when I moved. That was my first explanation. The leveling blocks were probably not seated right. The curtain rail was old. The fabric was stiff from damp air. Any of those answers made more sense than what my mind tried to do with it. I went back to the counter. The kettle clicked off. I poured the water. I added instant coffee. I took 1 sip and made a face because it tasted burned somehow. When I turned around, the curtain was open again. Same window. Same clean 2-inch gap. I did not move for a moment. I remember that very clearly. The coffee was hot in my hand, and the little yellow range light was humming above the stove, and the rain kept ticking softly against the roof. Everything sounded normal. That made it worse. I set the cup down and walked over slowly. Nothing was visible through the gap except the wet side mirror and the dark shape of the empty pull-through across the loop. No person, no truck idling, no flashlight beam, just black glass and rain. I closed the curtain harder that time. I slid the fabric all the way across, pressed the overlap flat with my palm, and watched it for almost a full minute. It stayed closed. Then I laughed once, quietly, because I felt ridiculous. I had driven 6 hours in rain, backed into a narrow site alone, and skipped dinner except for crackers. Of course, a curtain looks strange. Everything looks strange when you are tired and sitting inside a parked vehicle in the dark. Still, I took a picture of it. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted proof for myself that I had closed it. Maybe I was already worried I would look back later and remember it wrong. The photo showed exactly what I wanted it to show. The passenger side curtain shut tight, the beige fabric overlapping, the small black clip on the rail above it, the window completely covered. I put the phone face down on the dinette and tried to stop thinking about it. For a few minutes, I did. I changed out of my wet shoes. I turned the driver's seat around. I checked the weather on my phone. The signal was weak, but enough to show more rain after midnight. I thought about bringing in the leveling blocks in the morning before the gravel softened too much. Then the range light flickered. Only once. When it steadied again, the passenger side curtain had opened for the 3rd time. Same width, same place. And this time, The gap was not dark. There was a pale line on the outside of the glass, too low and too smooth to be rain. It looked like someone had wiped one finger down the window from the top edge of the opening to the bottom, clearing just enough water to see through. I stood there with the second picture made me feel better for about 30 seconds. It showed the curtain closed again. Nothing strange. Beige fabric, black rail, little plastic clip above the window, my own faint reflection in the dark microwave door behind me. If someone had looked at that photo without context, they would have seen a tired man overreacting to an old RV curtain in bad weather. That was what I wanted it to be. I found a chip bag clip in the drawer under the sink and clipped the two curtain panels together at the bottom. Then I took a second clip from a bag of coffee and used it near the middle. It looked ugly, but it held. I tugged lightly on the fabric to make sure it would not slide on its own. The whole rail rattled, but the curtain stayed shut. After that, I turned off the range light. The RV changed when the lights went out. It always does. During the day, an RV feels like a small room. At night, it feels like a display case. Every window becomes black. Every dark surface starts giving back pieces of the inside. The microwave door showed the dinette. The dead TV screen showed the kitchen. The bathroom mirror showed a slice of the hallway, and the windshield curtain glowed faintly from the porch light outside. I remember standing there longer than I should have, watching all those reflections overlap. Then I did something practical. I pulled one of the dinette cushions loose and leaned it against the passenger side window over the curtain. It covered most of the lower half, not all of it, but enough that I felt less exposed. I also turned the front passenger seat slightly, so the back of it blocked part of the same window. It was a stupid little barricade, but it helped. I sat at the dinette with my phone and tried calling my brother. Not because I wanted help, I just wanted a normal voice for a minute. The call failed before it rang. One bar kept appearing and disappearing at the top of the screen. I sent him a text instead. Something plain. Made it to camp. Rainy but fine. The message did not send. I told myself that was normal too. A lot of campgrounds have bad signal. That was not part of anything. That was just where I was. A few minutes later, I heard a soft click from the passenger side. Not outside, inside. I looked up fast. The curtain had not opened where I'd clipped it. The bottom and middle were still held tight, but the top edge had bowed inward along the rail, creating a thin, dark crescent above the clips. It was not 2 inches this time. It was smaller, maybe half an inch. Just enough for a line of darkness to appear between the fabric and the glass. I stood and pushed the top of the curtain flat with my hand. The fabric felt cold. That bothered me more than it should have. The RV was warm inside. The heater had been running for 20 minutes. The curtain should have felt dry and room temperature. Instead, the top edge felt like it had been pressed against the wet window from the outside, even though that made no sense. I left my hand there for a moment. On the other side of the fabric, beyond the glass, the rain kept ticking. Then something tapped once against the window. It was not loud. It was so small that I almost convinced myself it had been a drip from the awning rail. But the awning was not out. I had not set it up because of the rain. There was nothing over that window except the side of the RV and a narrow strip of wet gravel below it. I stepped back. The tap came again. Same spot. I reached for the porch light switch and turned it on. Pale yellow light spilled down the side of the RV. I did not open the curtain. I moved to the cab instead and leaned carefully toward the side mirror, trying to see without exposing my face at the window. The mirror showed the wet gravel beside my rig, the white hookup pedestal, my water hose curving from the post to the inlet, the empty pull-through across the loop. No one was there. That should have helped. It did not, because the side mirror was angled wrong. I had adjusted it earlier when I backed in. I remember doing it. It had been pointed down and back toward the rear tire and the yellow leveling blocks, the way I always set it when parking alone. Now it was turned outward just enough to show the passenger side window, not the road, not the back corner. The window. I stared at the mirror until my eyes started to hurt. Then I told myself I must have bumped the switch without noticing. The passenger door controls were old. Maybe I hit the mirror button when I checked the locks. Maybe the motor had drifted. Maybe the angle looked different because I was sitting in a different seat. The excuses still existed. They were just getting thinner. I went back to the dinette and picked up my phone. The text to my brother still had not sent. I opened the camera roll and looked at the first photo again. The one from before I clipped the curtain. At first, it looked the same. Closed curtain, beige fabric, black rail. Then I zoomed in on the passenger side window. There was a blurry vertical mark on the outside of the glass, almost hidden by the weave of the curtain. I had not noticed it before because I had been looking at the fabric, not through it. The mark was not shaped like a raindrop. It was too wide at the top and too clean along one side. It looked like something had wiped the water away before I took the picture. I zoomed in farther. Near the bottom of the mark, just above the line where the window met the frame, there were 3 short streaks pointing downward. Not scratches, not cracks, just cleaner paths through the rain film, the kind fingers might leave if they slid on wet glass. I lowered the phone and listened. Nothing moved outside, no footsteps, no voices, no truck engine. The campground sounded sleepy and normal, which somehow made the inside of the RV feel smaller. I decided then that I was not going outside. That was the first real choice I made that night. I could open the door, step down into the rain, and check the passenger side myself. Maybe I would find a loose branch touching the window. Maybe I would find nothing. Maybe another camper would see me standing there with a flashlight and think I was the strange one. Or I could stay inside with the door locked. I stayed inside. I took a roll of painter's tape from the utility drawer and taped the top of the curtain to the wall around the window. I used too much. Long strips across the fabric, short strips over the corners, one strip over the rail clip. I pressed each piece down hard with my thumb until the tape wrinkled. Then I stood there and waited. The curtain did not move. The tape held. The clips held. The cushion stayed propped against the lower half of the window. For the first time in almost an hour, the passenger side curtain looked closed in a way I could believe. I should have felt safer. Instead, I noticed the dark microwave door. It was across from the passenger side window, above the little stove. With the RV lights off and the porch light on outside, the microwave glass had turned into a weak mirror. It reflected the taped curtain. It reflected the dinette. It reflected me standing there barefoot on the vinyl floor. And in that reflection, above the taped fabric, there was still a narrow gap. I turned around fast. The actual curtain was sealed tight. I did not move for a long time. The towel hung over the microwave door with that small white dot trembling in the middle of it. It was not bright. It was not dramatic. It looked like the kind of light that leaks through a keyhole. That was what made it worse. It was controlled. Careful. Whoever held it was not waving it around. They were trying to find the same gap I had just covered. I backed away until my shoulders touched the refrigerator. The RV was so quiet I could hear the heater cycling under the cabinet. I remember thinking, in a stupid practical way, that I should not breathe too loud, as if breathing was something that could give me away inside my own rig. The light went out. For maybe 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the side of the RV made a soft plastic tick. Not a knock, not a scratch, just a tiny pressure sound, like someone had touched the exterior wall with one fingernail and let go. I picked up my phone and tried the campground office again. It went straight to the after-hours voicemail. I tried the non-emergency number printed on the map they gave me at check-in. The call connected for half a second, then dropped before anyone spoke. 1 bar, no bar, 1 bar again. I wanted to call 911, but I still did not know what to say. Someone is outside my RV. Maybe. Someone is shining a light at my curtain. Maybe. My microwave reflection looked wrong. Saying it in my head made it sound ridiculous. Saying it out loud would have made it worse. So I did the thing that felt safe without sounding insane. I turned on every exterior light I had. The porch light, the small amber light near the hookups, the weak rear utility light over the spare tire. The RV looked brighter outside than inside now. I moved low through the kitchen and peeked from the windshield, where the curtain had a small gap near the dash. I could see part of the campground loop through rain and glass. Wet asphalt, empty picnic table, a dark Class C motorhome 2 sites down, the white hookup pedestal beside my passenger window, no person. Then I saw the pedestal door was open. It had not been open when I hooked up. I was sure of that because I always closed those little plastic covers after plugging in. It was a habit. My dad drilled it into me after rain got into one on an old trip years earlier. Now the cover hung forward, bouncing slightly in the rain. That was enough physical evidence for me. Not proof of a person, maybe, but proof that something outside my RV had changed after I locked myself in. I grabbed my keys and moved to the driver's seat. The plan came together fast. Start the engine, pull the slide in, forget the leveling blocks, drag them if I had to, drive to the front gate and sit under the office light until morning. Then I remembered the slide out. The dinette slide was still extended on the passenger side, the same side as the window, the same side as the open pedestal. I could retract it from inside, but I would need to check that nothing was caught outside. Every RV owner knows that little fear. A branch, a chair, a hose, anything wedged wrong can rip, trim, or tear a seal. Under normal circumstances, I would have gone out with a flashlight and checked. I did not go out. I pressed the slide control anyway. The motor started with that heavy, grinding whine. The whole wall moved inward 3 inches, then stopped. The sound changed. Not broken exactly, strained. I let go of the button immediately. Something was caught. I stood there with my fingers still hovering over the switch. The RV had gone silent again. The slide was now partly retracted, just enough to make the interior feel crooked and cramped, not enough to drive safely. I had created a worse problem because I was scared, and I hated myself for it. That was when the tap came again. This time, it was not on the passenger window. It was on the slide-out wall. 3 light taps, slow, even, not loud enough to wake another camper, just loud enough for me. I did not answer. I did not speak. I did not ask who was there. I had the sharp, childish fear that if I used my voice, whoever was outside would know exactly where I stood. I took the flashlight from the drawer and crawled to the floor by the dinette. The slide had moved inward enough to leave a narrow seam of darkness along the rubber seal. Rainwater had beaded along the edge. I shone the flashlight low, not through the window, but along the floor where the slide met the wall. There was mud on the vinyl. Not a lot, just a thin smear near the bottom corner of the slide, about the length of 2 fingers. It should not have been there. The slide seal was supposed to keep weather out. I had wiped my shoes on the mat when I came in. I had not walked near that corner since then. The smear was fresh, dark, gritty, with tiny pieces of gravel. I stared at it until I understood the worst part. The mud was not spread from outside to inside like a leak. It was pressed inward, then dragged sideways, as if something had been pinched between the slide and the wall when I tried to retract it. My stomach went cold. I backed away from the slide and called 911. This time the call rang. The dispatcher's voice came through broken and thin. I gave the campground name, the loop, the site number, and said someone might be outside my RV. I kept the sentence simple. I did not mention the curtain. I did not mention the microwave reflection. I said the hookup pedestal had been opened. There were marks on the window, and something appeared to be caught in my slide out. That sounded real enough. The dispatcher told me to stay inside, keep the doors locked, and not confront anyone. She said a deputy was coming, but it would take time. The nearest unit was out on a highway call. Time became the problem after that. Every minute inside that RV felt too visible. I sat on the floor between the driver's seat and the kitchen cabinet, where I thought no window had a clean angle on me. I held the phone in one hand and the keys in the other. The exterior lights stayed on. The heater clicked. Rain worked its way down the windshield in silver lines. Then the backup camera monitor on the dash lit up. I had not touched it. The screen was small and grainy, the kind that made everything look farther away than it was. At first it showed the rear of the campsite, wet gravel, the back edge of the loop road, the spare tire cover. Nothing else. Then the image shook once, not like a glitch, like the camera housing had been touched. The view tilted down until it showed the ground behind the RV. There were no full footprints because the gravel was too uneven, but there were dark, wet marks in 2 short lines, leading from the passenger side toward the rear ladder. A person could have made them. The monitor went black before I could record it. I sat there, holding the phone, listening to the dispatcher say my name through the speaker. I had not realized I had stopped answering her. A few minutes later, the towel fell off the microwave. I did not sleep after that. I stayed in the driver's seat with the lights off and the keys in my hand. I kept one foot near the brake, even though I knew I could not just drive out like that. The slide out was still out. The power cord was still connected. The leveling blocks were still under the rear tires. If I panicked and tried to leave, I would probably tear something loose or get myself stuck halfway out of the site. So I sat there and waited for the sky to change. The RV felt smaller in the dark. During the day, it had always felt like a little apartment on wheels. At night, with every shade pulled and every reflective surface covered, it felt like a box I had trapped myself inside. I could hear the refrigerator hum. I could hear rain dripping off the awning. I could hear the soft tick of water running down the passenger side window. I kept looking at that curtain. It stayed closed. That should have made me feel better. It did not. The fact that it finally stayed closed made the earlier part worse. It meant something had changed. Either whatever was outside had stopped trying, or it had already seen enough. Around 5 in the morning, the rain thinned out. Not stopped. Just softened into that gray, steady kind of drizzle that makes everything look unfinished. I saw headlights move slowly across the ceiling. At first, I thought it was another camper leaving early. Then I heard a small engine. A campground maintenance cart came around the loop with an amber light blinking on top. It was moving slowly, the way they do when they are checking trash cans and bathroom locks before the office opens. I hit the horn once, not loud, just enough to make the cart stop. The man driving it looked annoyed at first. Then he saw me through the windshield, sitting there fully dressed, with the keys in my hand. I opened the driver's window just a crack. I told him someone had been outside my RV during the night. He looked past me toward the passenger side. Then he asked the first question everyone asks when they want something to be normal. "Are you sure it wasn't an animal?" I said I wasn't sure of anything. I told him about the curtain. I told him about the marks on the glass. I did not tell him about the mirror or the little moving dot of light on the towel. I knew how that would sound. I barely believed it myself, and I had been sitting in it all night. He parked the cart and walked around the RV. I watched him through the windshield. He moved slowly along the passenger side, then stopped at the window. He leaned close, but not too close. I could see his face change a little. Not fear, more like confusion. He wiped the glass with the back of his glove. Then he looked down at the gravel. There were no clear footprints. The rain had taken care of that. The gravel around the window was dark and wet, same as everything else. He pointed out that raccoons climbed RVs sometimes. He said people sometimes walked to the wrong site after drinking. He said condensation could make strange marks on glass. He was not rude. He was trying to help me file it into something ordinary. I wanted him to be right. Then he tapped lightly on the passenger window and said, "This one doesn't lock from outside, does it?" I told him it was just a window. He nodded, but he did not answer right away. When he came back around to the driver's side, he told me there were no cameras on that part of the loop. He said the office opened at 7. He said if I wanted, he could wait nearby while I packed up. That was enough for me. I did not make coffee. I did not shower. I did not fold anything the way I normally do. I moved like someone who did not want to look busy from outside. I kept the curtains closed, even though morning had come. I unplugged the shore power. I disconnected the water line. I left the sewer hose in its bin because I had never hooked it up the night before, and I remember being grateful for that in a stupid, shaky way. The maintenance man stood by his cart while I brought the slide out in. That part took forever. The motor made its normal grinding sound, but I kept imagining it stopping halfway. I kept imagining having to go outside and crank it in manually while someone watched from the trees, or from behind another rig, or from one of the empty sites across the loop. But it came in. I pulled the leveling blocks last. They were half sunk into the wet gravel, and mud sucked at them when I lifted them out. I threw them into the storage compartment without wiping them down. One of them hit the plastic wall harder than it should have, and the sound made both of us look toward the passenger side window. Nothing moved there. That was almost worse. I drove out before the office opened. At the front gate, I stopped beside the little wooden check-in booth and called the number printed on the after-hours sign. A woman answered on the second ring. She sounded half asleep, but polite. I told her I was leaving early because someone had been around my RV during the night. She asked what site I was in. I told her. There was a pause, just long enough for me to notice it. Then she said she would make a note. I asked if there had been any other complaints. She said, "Not last night." I did not like the way she said it. I drove 3 hours home without stopping except for gas. I kept checking the mirrors. I kept looking at the dark windows of trucks when they passed me. Not because I expected to see anyone, but because by then every reflective surface felt like it could betray me. When I got home, I parked the RV in my driveway and left it locked for 2 days. I told myself I was tired. I told myself it had been rain, a loose curtain, maybe some drunk guy from another site. I told myself the maintenance worker had not found anything serious. I told myself that if someone had wanted to break in, they would have tried the door. Those explanations helped during daylight. They did not help at night. On the third day, I went out to clean the RV. I started with the outside because there was mud all down the passenger side. The rain had dried into gray streaks. Leaves were stuck to the lower trim. The leveling blocks had left dirty smears in the storage bay. It all looked normal in that boring, post-trip way that usually makes a bad weekend feel over. Then I reached the passenger side window. I sprayed it with glass cleaner and wiped across it once. That was when I saw the oval. It was faint. I almost missed it. A cleaner patch on the outside of the glass, right where the curtain had kept opening. It was about the size of a face, but not shaped cleanly enough to prove anything. Just a soft, pale area where the rain marks were thinner. Below it, 2 narrow lines ran downward through the dried water, like rain had split around something raised. A nose. I stood there with the towel in my hand for a long time. Then I went inside. The RV smelled stale. Not bad, just closed up. I opened the main door and stepped in carefully, like I was entering someone else's space. The curtain on the passenger side window was still taped shut from that night. The towel was still draped over the small mirror near the door. I took the tape off first. The curtain fell loose. At the inner edge of the fabric, where the 2 sides met, there was a thin black mark. It was not mold, it was not dust from the road. It looked like rubber or grease, rubbed into the fabric in one narrow place, right where fingers would pinch it, right where someone would need it to open. I tried to wipe it off with a damp cloth. It did not move. I took the curtain down and washed it by hand in the sink. The water turned gray from normal dirt, but the mark stayed there. I used laundry soap, then dish soap, then a little alcohol on a paper towel. Nothing changed. By then, I was angry in a way that felt safer than being scared. I threw the curtain away. That should have ended it. A week later, I bought a new set of curtains and installed them myself. I checked the rail, I tightened the screws, I tested the track with the RV parked level in my driveway. The new curtain slid cleanly and stayed exactly where I put it. That night, before bed, I went outside to take the trash out. I looked at the RV without meaning to. The passenger side curtain was closed. Completely closed, but one edge of it was pulled back from the glass, just enough to make a narrow dark line, about 2 inches. I stopped using that window after that, not because the curtain was broken, because it always seemed to remember where to open. We stopped at the RV park because my wife could not keep riding in the passenger seat. She had one of those migraines that made light feel personal. By the time we got off the interstate, she had a towel over her eyes and both hands pressed against her temples. I paid for one night, took the tag from the APHIS and backed into the site while trucks hummed somewhere beyond the trees. I did the minimum: shore power, water hose, wheel chocks, 1 stabilizer on each side. I left the awning light on low because the steps were wet and I did not want my wife slipping if she had to get out. Inside, she went straight to the bed in the back. I pulled the curtains locked. The main door checked the deadbolt and tried to keep everything quiet. A little after 10, I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth. That was when I saw the steps. They were in the mirror over the sink. Not the bathroom floor, not the shower behind me. The outside steps of our RV lit by the yellow awning light with wet gravel underneath them. I stood there with the toothbrush in my hand and looked over my shoulder. There was no window behind me, just the shower curtain, a towel hook, and the beige wall panel that had been there since we bought the rig. The bathroom window was on the other side, small and frosted, facing the neighboring site. It did not face the door. It did not face the steps. I leaned closer to the mirror. The image stayed there. Bottom step. A strip of wet gravel. The dull yellow line from the awning light along the edge of the door. I opened the bathroom door wider, thinking maybe the mirror was catching the black TV screen in the living area. The image shifted a little, then disappeared. When I pulled the door halfway closed, it came back. That made me feel better for about 10 seconds. I went out and checked the TV. It was off, but it faced the wrong direction. The microwave door was dark enough to reflect things, so I stood in front of it and tried to line up the angle. It did not work. The small mirror by the entry did not work either. Nothing in that RV should have been able to put the outside steps into the bathroom mirror. I did not wake my wife. At that point, it was still an odd reflection. Annoying maybe, not dangerous. I took out my phone and recorded 6 seconds of the mirror. I wanted something to look at in the morning, when I was less tired and more willing to be reasonable. In the video, the steps were clear. The awning light flickered once. I stopped recording and went to the door. I looked through the narrow window beside it. The real steps were empty. The awning light was steady. I stood by the door for a while, looking through that skinny window beside the frame. The steps were still empty. The gravel was wet and flat. The awning light made a soft yellow puddle on the ground. Nothing moved under it except rainwater dripping from the edge of the awning. I went back to the bathroom. The mirror showed the steps again. I closed the bathroom door all the way. The image vanished. I opened it slowly, an inch at a time. At halfway, the steps came back into view. It was not a perfect picture. The edges were dim, like something seen through smoked glass. But the angle was too clean to be random. I tried not to make noise while I checked the rest of the RV. The TV was wrong. The microwave was wrong. The little mirror by the entry was wrong. I even opened the cabinet above the sink to see if the glossy door could be throwing the image around. It could not. I was tired enough to want a simple answer, but not tired enough to accept a bad one. When I looked into the bathroom mirror again, the reflection had changed. The RV door in the mirror was open about 2 inches. The real door was not. I walked straight to it and touched the deadbolt. Locked. I pressed on the door. It did not move. The screen door was latched too. I looked through the side window again. Outside, the steps were empty and the door was closed. In the bathroom mirror, it was still open. That was the first time I thought about waking my wife. Then I heard her shift in the bed, still breathing through the migraine, and I stopped. I could not hand her something that I could not even explain yet. I told myself I would check one more thing. I opened the video I had taken. For the first few seconds, it showed exactly what I remembered. The mirror, the outside steps, the awning light. Then I noticed the doorway. In the recording, I was visible in the mirror too, but not from where I had been standing. It showed me from lower down, from the angle of someone outside the RV looking up through the open door. I watched it 3 times. On the 4th time, the awning light in the video flickered twice. I looked toward the real door. 3 seconds later, the real awning light flickered twice. I put the phone down on the counter. There are moments where you do not panic, because panic would require deciding what is happening. I was not there yet. I only knew I did not want that mirror uncovered. I took the hand towel from the hook and draped it over the glass. It stayed there. I backed out of the bathroom and stood in the hall listening to the rain. A minute later, something soft landed on the floor. The towel was down. I picked the towel up with 2 fingers like it might be wet. It was dry. The hook was still on the wall. Nothing had broken. The towel had not slid off a smooth surface either. I had tucked the top edge behind the mirror frame. I remembered doing that because I did not want it falling. I put it on the counter and looked into the mirror. The steps were still there, only now there was something on the bottom one. A small plastic campground tag. For a second I thought it was ours. The office had given me one when we checked in, a cheap white tag with our site number written in black marker. I had set it on the kitchen counter beside the keys. I walked out and checked. Our tag was still there. I did not touch it. I just looked at it long enough to make sure I was not mixing things up. White plastic, black marker, same shape. Then I went back to the door and looked through the narrow side window. There was a tag on the step outside. I almost opened the door. My hand was already on the lock before I stopped. That was the part I remember clearly. Not fear, just the sudden thought that opening the door would make the whole thing real in a way I could not undo. So I left the deadbolt alone. I used my phone instead. I pressed the camera against the side window and zoomed in on the step. The picture came out grainy because of the rain and the awning light, but it was enough. The tag outside had our site number on it, same thick black marker. I went to the kitchen counter and took a picture of the tag inside. Then I compared both photos standing in the dark ERV with the bathroom light behind me. They were not the same tag. The inside one had a small chip on the top corner. The outside one did not. I called the campground office. It went to voicemail. I tried the non-emergency number next. The call connected, broke up, then dropped. I had 1 bar if I stood near the windshield, none if I moved toward the bathroom. My wife coughed once from the bedroom. I froze until she settled again. I did not want to wake her and make her stand in that RV with me, unless I had to. She was sick. We were hooked up. The stabilizers were down. A 5th wheel was parked close behind us, and the road through the loop was narrow. Leaving meant going outside alone and working around the hookups, while whatever had put that tag on the step stayed somewhere nearby. I went to the control panel and turned off the awning light. Outside, the yellow light went out. The step disappeared into darkness. In the bathroom mirror, the awning light stayed on. I stood in the hall and watched it for maybe 5 seconds before I understood what was wrong. The mirror was not reflecting the door anymore. It was showing the steps like they were still lit. The tag was gone now. In its place were wet footprints. 2 of them. They were on the RV steps facing outward, as if someone had walked out from inside. I woke my wife after that. I did not tell her everything. I told her something was wrong outside, and that we were leaving when it got light. She sat up too fast and winced one hand over her eye, so I kept my voice low and gave her the part that mattered. Do not open the door. She did not argue. That was one of the things I hated later. She believed me quickly because she could see my face. We moved into the bedroom and pulled the thin privacy curtain across the hall. It would not have stopped anyone. I knew that. It only gave us one less straight line from the bathroom mirror to where we were sitting. I kept both phones plugged in. I put the keys on the mattress between us. My wife held her phone with the emergency number already typed in. Neither of us slept. I heard rain. I heard trucks on the interstate. Once I heard something shift near the kitchen counter, but I did not go look. Around dawn, an engine started in the site beside ours. That sound helped more than any alarm could have. Someone else was awake. Someone else was outside. I waited until I heard a door slam, then I got dressed and moved fast. My wife stayed by the entry with her phone up. The tag was gone from the step. There was no footprint there either, just wet metal and a dry rectangle where the tag had been sitting. The shape was clean with sharp corners, like it had been placed there after the rain started and removed before it could get wet. I did not touch the spot. I disconnected the water hose first, then shore power. I left the stabilizers halfway dirty and shoved everything into the storage bay without packing it right. The man from the next site looked over once while he coiled his own cord. I almost asked if he had seen anyone. I did not. I wanted out more than I wanted answers. The office had just opened when we pulled up. The same woman who checked us in was behind the counter drinking coffee from a paper cup. I put our plastic site tag down in front of her and asked if they printed extras. She looked at it and said no. I told her another one had been on our step during the night. She asked which site we had been in. I told her. She typed something into the computer, then looked toward the window instead of at me. There were no cameras on that loop. She said that first. Then she said sometimes headlights from the interstate made strange reflections in RV windows and mirrors. People complained about it more than you would think. I had not mentioned the bathroom mirror. My wife caught that too. I felt her shift beside me. The woman must have noticed because she gave us a small, practiced smile and added, especially near the bath side of the rig. I picked up the tag and said we were leaving. She did not charge us for the night. We drove until noon before we stopped. My wife slept for most of it, or pretended to. I kept seeing the mirror in my head, not because it showed something impossible, because it showed it with the dull, normal light of a campground at night. No drama, no face, just our steps, our door, our site number, like someone had found the right angle and kept it. At home, I left the RV parked for 2 days. On the third day, I went in to clean it out. The bathroom still had the towel on the floor where I had dropped it before we left. I picked it up, folded it without thinking, then looked at the mirror. In daylight, it looked cheap and harmless. I almost left it alone. Then I saw the scratch. It was thin, straight, vertical, right across the place where the open RV door had appeared in the reflection. I rubbed it with my thumb. It was not on the surface. It was under the glass or behind it. I took the mirror off the wall. 4 screws, plastic anchors, nothing strange about that part. The backing was brown cardboard, the kind manufacturers staple onto cheap RV fixtures. Near the lower corner, written small in black marker, were 3 words. "Leave it uncovered." I stood there with the mirror in my hands until my wife came in and asked what I had found. I did not answer right away. The handwriting did not match the site tag. I checked later. I checked because I wanted that to mean something, but it only made it worse. The words behind the mirror had been there longer. The marker was faded into the cardboard. We replaced the mirror before our next trip. I still cover the new one before I sleep. The woman at the campground office told me I was in Site 27. I remember that because she said it twice. Once while she typed my name into the computer, and again when she slid the folded map across the counter with my parking tag and the bathroom code. It was almost closing time. The little office smelled like wet carpet and burnt coffee. A radio behind the desk was playing low, mostly static. Outside, rain was tapping on the porch roof hard enough that I could barely hear the ice machine by the door. I was not there for a vacation. I was stopping for 2 nights because I was tired of driving in bad weather. That was it. Sleep dump the tanks, maybe do laundry, then get back on the road. The map had already been marked when she handed it to me. Site 38 was circled in pencil. I looked at it for a second, then looked back at her. "I thought you said 27. She blinked, then took the map back. "Sorry, old map." She scratched a line through the pencil circle and circled Site 27 with a black marker. She did it fast, like she had made a small mistake and wanted it gone before I made it awkward. I did not push it. People change sites. Campgrounds reuse maps. Office staff get tired. I had made enough campground mistakes myself to know none of that meant anything on its own. She gave me the tag and pointed toward the road. "Loop C. Take the second left after the bathhouse. Some of the lights are out back there, so go slow." That was the first thing I should have paid more attention to. Loop C was darker than the entrance. Not black, just uneven. One lamp worked near the bathhouse. Another one flickered near the dumpsters. The rest of the loop was mostly jig RV porch lights, amber marker lights, and the pale glow from people's windows behind curtains. Site 27 was a back-in gravel pad with a wet picnic table and a power pedestal leaning slightly to one side. There were pine needles stuck to everything. The site across from me was empty. A few rigs were scattered farther down the loop, but not many. Late season does that. It makes a campground feel half open, even when it is still taking money. I backed in on the second try. That bothered me because I am usually better than that. The rear tires kept wanting to slide a little on the wet gravel, and I had to get out once to check the angle. The rain was cold enough to make my hands stiff. I put the leveling blocks under the low side, plugged in shore power, connected the water hose, and dropped the stabilizers just enough to take the bounce out. I did not bother with the awning. I did not set out chairs. I was not staying outside. Inside, I wiped my shoes on a towel and hung the parking tag near the door. That was when I saw the mark on the back of it. It was faint, almost nothing. A gray pencil smear near the corner, partly rubbed away by someone's thumb. I turned the tag under the light. It looked like 2 numbers had been written there before. 38. I stood there longer than I needed to. Then I hung it up anyway. The rain got harder after dark. I made a sandwich, opened a soda, and pulled the curtains along the passenger side. When I reached the kitchen window, I stopped with the curtain halfway across the glass. Across the loop, past a strip of wet gravel and two thin pine trees, was Site 38. It was empty. No truck, no trailer, no picnic cooler, nothing on the pad except a dark utility pedestal and a square of gravel that looked flatter than the rest. It should not have mattered, but from where I was standing, I could see the angle clearly. Site 38 was not directly across from me. It was offset just enough to look into the side of my RV through the kitchen window, past the counter, and toward the dinette if my curtains were open. I pulled the curtain shut. Then I took the campground map out of the dinette drawer and opened it on the table. The black marker circle around Site 27 was thick. The pencil mark around Site 38 had been crossed out, but it had not disappeared. It was still there under the ink pressed into the paper. I folded the map and put it away. A few minutes later, I checked the parking tag again. The back still said 38. Faint but there. The first time the white pickup passed my site, I barely noticed it. Campgrounds have traffic even when they look quiet. People arrive late. People miss their turn. Someone always forgets ice or takes the long way to the bathhouse because they do not want to walk in the rain. The truck moved past Site 27 with its headlights low and its wipers going. It did not stop. It did not slow down much. I saw the white hood slide across my curtains and then disappear around the bend. 10 minutes later, it came through again. That got my attention, but not enough to make me worried. Loop C curved back on itself. If somebody was looking for a friend's site, they might have missed the number in the dark. Half the markers were wet and hard to read. The third time I put my sandwich down, the truck was going slower now. It rolled past the bathhouse without turning in. It passed the dumpsters. It passed two empty pull-throughs. Then it eased down near Site 38, almost like the driver was checking that spot even though there was nothing parked there. I stood beside the kitchen counter and watched through the smallest opening I could leave in the curtain. The windows were tinted. Rain ran down the driver's side glass. I could not see who was inside. I could only see a pale shape where a face would be. Then nothing, then the red smear of the taillights on wet gravel. I told myself it was maintenance. That made sense. Some of the lights were out. It was raining. Maybe they were checking the low spots before the storm got worse. Then the truck came around again. This time, when it passed my RV, I saw my own kitchen light in its side window. That by itself was normal. Dark glass reflects light, but the reflection was too clear. I could see the edge of my counter, the paper towel roll near the sink, the little amber light over the dinette. I could see my own shape standing there with one hand still holding the curtain. The truck was moving on the road several yards away. It should have shown a blur. Maybe the outside of my RV, maybe a streak of yellow light, not the inside. I stepped back and turned off the kitchen light. The RV went dim. Only the microwave bum's clock and the small lamp over the dinette stayed on. When the truck came around again, the reflection in its glass still showed the kitchen light. I checked the switch because that is what people do when something makes no sense. The light was off. I touched it twice. Off. The counter was dark. The sink was dark. In the truck window, it was not. I got my phone from the table. I did not want to press the camera right against the glass, so I filmed through the curtain gap from a few feet back. The video was bad. Rain on the window, my hand shaking more than I wanted to admit. The truck moving slow, then slower as it reached the empty pad across the loop. I could not read the plate. For a while, that annoyed me more than anything else. After it passed, I sat at the dinette and watched the video. The first few seconds were useless. Headlights, curtain edge, my thumb blocking the bottom corner. Then I paused it on the frame where the truck was beside Site 38. The side window of the pickup caught the RV again. Inside the reflection, I was standing near the sink, but I was not standing near the sink when I recorded that. I was sitting at the dinette. I looked up from the phone and stared at the place where I had been sitting. Then I looked at the sink. It was maybe 6 feet away, not far. Still wrong. I rewound the video and watched the same frame again. The angle was wrong too. The truck window should have reflected my RV from the road, low and moving. Instead, the reflection showed the kitchen from higher up and farther back, like the view was coming through the gap between the two pine trees near Site 38. I got up and walked to the windshield. From there I could see part of the empty site through the rain. The utility pedestal, the picnic table, the gravel pad with water shining in the low spots. Nothing else. No person. No truck. I went back to the kitchen window and looked through the curtain gap again. Site 38 was still empty. That did not help, because by then I had already seen the angle. If somebody stood there just behind the pedestal, they would not need to come close to my RV. They would not need to knock. They would not need to touch anything. They could just stand in the empty site and look straight in. I closed the curtain all the way. A few minutes later, headlights moved across the ceiling again. I turned off every light I could. The kitchen light was already off. I switched off the dinette lamp, then the small light over the entry. I left the refrigerator on because I did not want to start making stupid choices just because I was scared. The RV settled into that dim blue darkness you get from appliance clocks and charging cables. It should have made the windows safer. It did not. When the inside got darker, the reflective surfaces got better. The black TV screen showed the kitchen behind me. The microwave door showed the narrow hallway. The passenger window showed a faint version of the dinette table doubled over the rain outside. Every surface had a little piece of the ERV in it. I was standing near the sink when I noticed the microwave door. There was a small white point in it. At first I thought it was the microwave clock reflecting back on itself. I covered the clock with my hand. The white point stayed. I moved left. It moved a little too. Not because it was moving, because I was changing the angle. I looked toward the window. The curtains were closed but not sealed. No RV curtain seals all the way unless you make it. There is always a thin gap at the edge, or a place where the fabric bows away from the glass. I had never cared about that before. I opened the curtain with one finger. Only enough for the phone camera. Across the loop, Site 38 was still empty. No pickup, no headlights, no person by the pedestal. But there was something white attached to the utility pedestal. It had not been there when I set up. I was sure of that. I had looked at that site too many times by then to miss it. I zoomed in. The image shook because my hand was shaking. I braced my wrist against the window frame and tried again. It looked like a parking tag. White plastic, rounded corners, hanging from the side of the pedestal by a short piece of wire or a hook. There was a number on it, 27. I turned and looked at my own parking tag near the door. It was still hanging there. I walked over and touched it just to make myself stop guessing. My tag was real, dry, still on the hook where I had put it. Site 27 in black marker on the front. The faint old 38 on the back. The tag across the loop was not mine, or it was another one. That was when I thought about leaving. Not in the vague way people say later. I mean, I actually stood there and pictured the steps. Shoes on, jacket, flashlight, go outside, pull the water hose, pull the power, raise the stabilizers, get the leveling blocks out from under the tires. Back out in the rain while trying not to hit the pedestal. All of that would take time. All of it would happen outside. And whoever put that tag on Site 38, if someone had put it there, wanted me looking in that direction. I called the office. Voicemail. I tried the after-hours number from the paper tag. It rang 6 times and cut off. I tried non-emergency. The call connected for maybe 3 seconds. A woman's voice said something I could not make out. Then the signal dropped. I had one bar near the windshield and none near the kitchen. I stood there with the phone in my hand trying to decide if I should honk the horn. That is a strange thing to admit. It seems obvious now. Make noise, wake people up. But at the time the loop was quiet. Other people were sleeping in their own rigs. And what would I say if someone came out? There is a tag with my site number across the road. A truck window reflected my kitchen wrong. The office circled the wrong site on my map. It sounded small when I lined it up that way. Then the white pickup came back. It did not pass my sight this time. I saw the wash of headlights through the curtain edges, then heard the tires move slowly over wet gravel. The truck stopped somewhere to my right, not beside me, farther across the loop, near Site 38. I looked at the microwave door again. The white point had become a pale rectangle. For a second, I thought it was the truck window. Then the rectangle shifted, and I saw the line of my own counter inside it, the paper towel roll, the edge of the sink, a piece of the refrigerator door. It was my RV. From outside, I reached for the breaker panel and killed the microwave circuit. The display went black. The reflection vanished. I stood there in the quiet, listening to the rain and the low idle of the pickup. Then the TV screen caught a new point of light. Same direction. Site 38. I did not move closer. I did not uncover the window again. I just stood in the dark and understood something I wish I had not. Whoever was out there did not need one window. They had the whole rearview to work with. I stayed awake until morning. Not in the dramatic way people say it. I did not sit there holding a knife or staring through the blinds until sunrise. I sat on the dinette bench with my jacket on my shoes tied and the keys on the table in front of me. Every few minutes I checked the time. Every few minutes I checked the phone signal. The white pickup did not come around again after that. That did not make it better. It meant I had no idea where it was. Around 6, the campground began making normal sounds again. A diesel engine started 2 sites down. Someone shut a storage bay hard enough to make me flinch. A dog barked once near the bathhouse, then a woman told it to hush. Those sounds helped, not because they proved anything was safe, but because they meant I was not the only person awake anymore. I waited until I saw a man in a rain jacket walking toward the bathhouse with a towel under his arm. Then I went outside. The air smelled like wet gravel and pine. My site looked ordinary in that flat gray morning light. Power cord, water hose, mud on the leveling blocks, rain dripping off the edge of the roof. I did not look across the loop right away. I made myself walk to the pedestal first and shut off the breaker before I pulled the shore power. Then I coiled the cord badly and shoved it into the compartment. I disconnected the water hose and got my sleeve wet to the elbow. I left the filter attached because I did not want to stand there unscrewing things while my back was turned. Only then did I look at Site 38. It was empty. No white pickup, no tag, nothing hanging from the pedestal. I walked toward the bathhouse like that had been my plan all along. I did not cut straight across the road. I followed the loop slow enough that anyone watching would think I was just another camper walking in the morning rain. When I got close to Site 38, I looked at the pedestal. The tag was gone, but the side of the pedestal had a clean rectangle on it. Everything else was damp and dirty. Pine pollen had made a yellow film on the metal. Rain had dragged it into streaks. The rectangle was clean with sharp corners, right where the white tag had been hanging in my phone video. I took one picture. Then I put the phone away and kept walking. I did not go to the bathhouse. I turned around at the trash cans and went back to my RV. It took me less than 15 minutes to finish packing. I raised the stabilizers, pulled the leveling blocks, and left mud on them. I did not sweep the floor. I did not make breakfast. I checked the mirrors twice before I pulled out because my hands were not steady. When I shifted into reverse, the backup camera came on. For 1 second, the screen showed Site 38. That was not possible from my angle. My RV was pointed toward the exit side of the loop. The camera should have shown the gravel pad behind me and part of the road. Instead, there was the empty pedestal across the loop, the 2 pine trees, and the dark square where the tag had been. Then the image corrected itself. Gravel, road, back bumper. I backed out carefully and drove to the office. A different woman was working the counter that morning, older, glasses on a chain. She was sorting receipts into a plastic tray and did not look surprised to see someone checking out early. I told her I needed to leave. She asked if something was wrong with the site. I almost said no. Then I asked about Site 38. She stopped sorting receipts, only for a second. Drainage issue, she said. We don't usually put people there unless we're full. I nodded, like that answered something. Then I asked if maintenance drove a white pickup. She said they did, but it had been parked behind the office all week because the transmission was out. She said it casually, like it was annoying, not important. I did not tell her what I had seen in the truck window. I did not mention the tag. I just stood there while she printed my checkout receipt. The printer made that slow scraping sound cheap printers make. She tore the paper off and slid it across the counter. My name was right. The dates were right. The vehicle description was right. Assigned Site 38. Beside it, someone had written 27 by hand. I looked at the receipt long enough that she looked down too. "Oh," she said, "that's weird." She clicked around on the computer. Her mouth tightened a little, but she kept her voice normal. "System must not have updated after the change." I asked who changed it. She said probably the night clerk. I asked if the night clerk was there. She said she had gone home. That was where the conversation ended. Not because I had no more questions, because I could feel the woman behind the counter deciding I had become difficult. I folded the receipt and put it in my wallet. As I turned to leave, she picked up the office map from under the counter. I do not know why. Maybe she was going to check the loop. Maybe she only moved it out of the way. But I saw the back of it for half a second. There was a pencil circle pressed into the paper. Not dark, not fresh. Just an old gray groove in the shape of a loop around one site. I did not ask her to turn it over. I already knew where it was. I drove for almost an hour before I pulled over. There was a gas station outside a small town, the kind with 2 diesel pumps and a subway attached to it. I parked near the edge of the lot and sat there with both hands on the wheel until a delivery truck pulled in beside me. That was when I took the receipt out again. Assigned Site 38, handwritten correction 27. I folded it back up and put it in the glove box with the map. I did not call the police. I know that sounds wrong when I say it now, but I still do not know what I would have reported. No plate number, no damage, no threat, no person I could point to. A tag that was gone by morning. A reflection in a truck window. A campground computer that might have made an ordinary mistake. People want clean stories after something strange happens. They want the part where you did the correct thing and someone official wrote it down. Most of the time you just leave. By the time I got home, I had talked myself halfway out of it. The white pickup could have belonged to another camper. The reflection could have been rain and dark glass. The tag could have been something else with a number that looked like mine. The office could have assigned me wrong, then fixed it badly. That explanation worked better while I was unloading. It worked while I carried groceries inside. It worked while I rinsed mud off the leveling blocks and left them drying beside the garage. It worked while I told myself I was lucky the campground had been creepy instead of actually dangerous. It stopped working 3 days later. I went back into the RV to clean it properly. The floor still had pine needles stuck near the entry. There were crumbs under the dinette from the sandwich I had barely eaten. A wet towel had dried stiff over the back of the passenger seat. I started with the dinette. The cushions in that RV lifted out if you pulled them forward and up. Underneath was storage, mostly things I never used. A small broom, extra paper towels, a plastic bin with fuses tape and old batteries. Nothing interesting. I pulled the left cushion out to vacuum behind it. Something slid down between the wall and the wooden bench frame. At first I thought it was a receipt. I reached in and pulled out a folded campground map. For a few seconds I just looked at it. It was from the same campground, same logo, same little cartoon pine tree near the office, same warning about quiet hours and pets on leashes. But it was not my map. My map was still in the glove box. I knew that because I had put the receipt inside it at the gas station. I went out and checked anyway. It was there. On that map, Site 27 was circled in black marker. Site 38 had the crossed out pencil mark underneath. The map from behind the cushion was cleaner. No rain spots, no pine pollen, no black marker, no fold through the middle where I had opened and closed mine all night. Site 38 was circled in pencil, only Site 38. Beside it, written small enough that I almost missed it, were 4 words. Better view from there. I sat down on the RV step with both maps in my lap. I checked the door first, then the windows, then the storage compartments. Nothing was broken. Nothing was open. The locks still worked. The screens were intact. There were no muddy footprints inside, no missing tools, no sign that anyone had been in there. That should have helped. It did not, because the map had been behind the dinette cushion. Not on the floor, not on the counter, not somewhere it could have blown in. Someone would have had to know the RV well enough to pull the cushion out, slide the map behind it, and put the cushion back. Or it had been there before I ever got to the campground. I did not like either answer. I put both maps and the receipt into a folder and shoved it into the glove box. I kept it there for months. Every time I opened that compartment for registration papers or spare fuses, I saw the edge of the folder and felt stupid for keeping it. My wife found it eventually. She read the receipt first, then the map, then the other map. She did not say much. She only asked why I still had them. I told her I did not know. That was true. Later that week, I threw the folder away. I remember carrying it to the trash can outside. I remember dropping it in under a black garbage bag from the kitchen. I remember feeling better for maybe an hour. A few months later, I was looking for a tire pressure gauge before another trip. I opened the glove box. There was one folded campground map inside. No folder, no receipt, just the map. I stood there in the driveway with the RV door open and the afternoon sun on my back. For a while, I did not touch it. Then I unfolded it on the passenger seat. Site 38 was circled in pencil. The words were still there. Better view from there. I checked the trash in my head. I checked the day I threw the folder away. I tried to remember whether I had thrown out both maps or only one, or whether I had taken this one out first for some reason and forgotten. I still do not know. That is the part I hate. Not the truck, not the office, not even the tag across the loop. I do not know which map I threw away. The backup camera turned on at 11:40 p.m. The truck was off. The keys were on the counter. I was inside the RV rinsing a paper plate in the sink when the little monitor in the cab lit up by itself. At first I thought I had left something on. I dried my hands and walked up front. The screen was glowing blue-white through the windshield reflection, bright enough to light the steering wheel and the passenger seat. It showed the gravel road behind the RV wet from the evening rain. Nothing else. Just the road, a strip of pine needles, the dark shape of the site marker behind us. I leaned into the cab and checked the ignition. Off. The gear shift was in park. The parking brake was set. The keys were still on the kitchen counter, where I had dropped them after leveling the rig. The backup camera was only supposed to come on in reverse. That was the whole point of it. I pressed the power button on the monitor. It went black. I stood there for a second waiting to see if it would come back. It did not. That should have been enough for me to go to bed, but I was already annoyed. That site had been hard to back into. State park sites are like that sometimes. Narrow gravel pad trees too close on both sides, a drainage ditch behind the picnic table. I had needed the camera to get in without hitting the power pedestal. I was not excited about electrical problems. I checked the plug behind the monitor. Dry, firm, nothing loose. I checked the small fuse panel under the dash and found nothing warm or melted. Then I went back into the RV and locked the door again. The site was quiet. There were only 3 other rigs in that part of the campground. A fifth wheel 2 sites down with blue rope lights under the steps. A small Class C across the loop. A dark travel trailer near the bathhouse that looked empty except for one porch light. I had already done the normal things. Leveling blocks under the rear tires, shore power connected, water hose connected, stabilizers down, curtains pulled. I had not unhooked everything perfectly, but it was good enough for one night. The monitor came on again while I was brushing my teeth. No click, no beep, just light from the cab spreading across the ceiling. I went up front slower that time. The screen showed the back of my RV, not the road. The rear bumper filled the bottom of the frame. Above it, the spare tire cover. To the right, the ladder. Rain moved down the lens in crooked lines. I looked through the rear window from inside the ear. Spy. The ladder was there exactly where it should be. Then I looked back at the monitor. Something was wrong near the ground. The leveling blocks were out from under the rear tire. On the screen, they were sitting behind the RV in 2 muddy stacks, pulled clear of the wheel like someone had already packed them up. I walked to the side window and pulled the curtain back. Outside, the blocks were still under the tire. I could see the yellow plastic edge just below the rubber, wet gravel pressed around it, exactly where I had put it. I went back to the screen. The blocks were still behind the RV. I did not say anything out loud. I remember that. I just stood there with toothpaste in my mouth, looking from the window to the monitor and back again. Then the screen flickered. For maybe 1 second, the image went black. When it came back, the gravel road was behind us again. No bumper, no ladder, no loose leveling blocks. Just the empty road. I turned the monitor off and unplugged it from the dash. This time I took the keys off the counter and put them in my pocket. I kept the monitor unplugged. That should have ended it. Instead, I spent the next 10 minutes walking around the inside of the Sherwa RV like I had misplaced something. I checked the back window again. I checked the curtains. I looked at the leveling blocks through the side window one more time, even though I had already seen them. They were still under the tire. I took a picture of them from inside through the glass. It came out blurry because of the rain, but the yellow block was visible under the rear wheel. Then I went back to the sink and finished brushing my teeth. I was spitting into the basin when the RV lights dimmed. Not all the way out. Just a small dip, the kind you get when the air conditioner kicks on, or someone at the next site runs something heavy on shore power. The lights came back normal. Then they dipped again. I looked toward the door. The small power meter near the entry was still lit. Shore power was connected. Nothing had tripped. I heard a soft scrape outside. It came from the driver's side where the power pedestal was. I stood still and listened. Rain on the roof, a drip from the awning rail. Farther off, a truck on the park road. No footsteps, no voices. The monitor in the cab came on again. It was still unplugged. The cable hung loose from the back of it. I could see it from where I stood in the hallway. The screen showed the rear of the RV again. This time the power cord was on the ground. On the screen, the thick black cord had been pulled from the pedestal and dropped into the gravel. The plug end was lying near a puddle. The little blue light on the surge protector was dark. I looked toward the entry panel. Inside, the RV shore power was still on. The microwave clock was on. The refrigerator was humming. The battery charger light was green. I went to the side window by the dinette and moved the curtain just enough to see the pedestal. The real cord was still plugged in. The surge protector glowed blue in the rain. I did not go outside. I wanted to. I wanted to step out, look at the cord, look behind the RV, prove the camera was only showing some frozen image from earlier. But the screen was showing something that had not happened. That made going outside feel like walking into instructions. I took my phone and filmed the monitor. The video caught the loose cable behind the monitor hanging free. It caught the screen glowing anyway. It caught the feed showing my cord on the ground. Then the RV lights flickered again. This time they stayed dim for 2 seconds. I looked through the window. The cord outside jerked once. Not far, just enough for the blue light on the surge protector to blink. I backed away from the curtain. On the monitor, the cord was already unplugged. In real life, it was still plugged in, but not as firmly as before. The plug had shifted out from the pedestal by maybe half an inch. I locked the deadbolt again, even though it was already locked. I put my shoes on. The monitor flickered. The image changed. Now the camera showed the gravel directly behind the RV. The leveling blocks were gone from under the tires. The power cord was coiled beside the bumper. The stabilizers were raised. It looked like I had already packed up to leave. I had done none of that. Then something moved at the edge of the frame. A flashlight beam swept across the ground behind the RV. Slow, careful. It stopped on the empty place where the leveling blocks should have been. I looked at my own flashlight on the counter. Still there. The beam on the screen lifted. For 1 second, it pointed straight into the camera. The monitor went white, then black. I waited for it to come back. It did not. I did not touch the monitor after that. I left it black on the dashboard and sat at the dinette with my phone in front of me. The video I had recorded was still open. I watched it once with the sound off, then once with the sound on. The unplugged cable was visible. The screen was still running. The power cord was on the ground in the feed. Then outside the rear window, the cord shifted. I did not need to watch it again. The state park office was closed. The campground host number was printed on the map, but my call went straight to voicemail. I tried the ranger station. Same thing. I had one bar near the windshield if I held the phone above my head, none at the dinette. I thought about driving out. Then I looked at the road behind the RV. The site was narrow. Trees close on both sides. The gravel sloped down behind me before it curved back toward the loop road. Backing in had taken 2 tries in daylight with the camera working. Doing it at night in the rain with a screen I could not trust sounded like a good way to put the rear corner into a pine tree. I stayed inside. That was not brave. It was the only choice that did not involve standing behind the RV in the dark. Around midnight, the monitor came on again. No sound, no startup screen, just the camera feed. I had unplugged it. I had checked that twice. The cable still hung loose. The feed showed the back of the RV, but lower than before. It was pointed toward the gravel, the bumper, and the space where a person would stand to guide someone out. A person was standing there, only from the waist down. Jeans, dark shoes, rain hitting the gravel around both feet. For 2 or 3 seconds, I thought someone had come behind my RV. Then the person lifted one arm into frame. They made the hand signal for backing up. Palm toward the camera, slow motion back. I looked toward the door. My flashlight was still on the counter. My rain jacket was still hanging from the hook. I was still inside. The person in the camera took 1 step back. Same shoes as mine, same jeans. I was wearing both. I moved before I could talk myself into sitting there. I went to the driver's seat and hit the lock button on the truck remote until I heard the doors chirp. Then I locked the RV door again. Then I pulled the cab curtain across the windshield, even though the monitor was on my side of it. The camera feed kept going. On the screen, the person behind the RV gave the signal again. Back up, back up, back up. I pressed the monitor power button. Nothing happened. I held it down. Nothing. I put the towel from the sink over the screen. Light bled through the fabric. I could still see the shape of the person behind the RV moving one hand in the same slow motion. I picked up the monitor and turned it face down on the passenger seat. The glow spread across the upholstery. For a while, I just listened. The power cord outside tapped once against the pedestal. The rain ticked on the roof. Somewhere down the loop, a dog barked twice and stopped. Then the RV lights went out. Everything. Microwave, clock, entry panel, refrigerator, hum. The inside of the RV went completely dark, except for the monitor glowing under the towel in the cab. I did not move. A few seconds later, the lights came back. The refrigerator started humming again. The microwave clock blinked 12 o'clock. I looked through the side window. The surge protector at the pedestal was still lit blue, but the cord sat at a slight angle now, pulled farther from the socket than before. Not out, almost. I decided I would not wait until morning if the power failed again. I would hit the horn, wake the campground, and take the embarrassment. I got into the driver's seat and put my hand on the horn. The monitor still face down changed brightness under the towel. I lifted one corner before I could stop myself. The camera showed the rear of the RV again. Empty gravel. No person. No hand signal. At the bottom of the screen, white text flashed for a second. No reverse signal. Then another image appeared. The same back of the RV. The same gravel. Only now the camera showed me standing there in my rain jacket behind the rig, holding my flashlight down by my leg. I was not wearing my rain jacket. I was not outside. The figure turned slightly, just enough for the flashlight beam to hit the camera lens. The screen went white again. This time I hit the horn. The horn sounded too loud in that quiet campground. I held it for maybe 2 seconds, then let go. My hand was shaking enough that I hit it again by accident. The second blast was shorter, but it did what I needed it to do. A porch light came on across the loop, then another. A man yelled something from the fifth wheel 2 sights down. I could not make out the words through the rain, but he sounded awake and angry, which was fine with me. Angry was better than asleep. I opened the driver's window a few inches and called out that someone might be behind my RV. The man from the fifth wheel stepped out in a rain jacket, barefoot in sandals, holding a flashlight like he had done this before. His wife stood in their doorway with a phone in her hand. He shined the light behind my rig. Nothing. He did not walk all the way back there at first. He swept the beam over the gravel, the spare tire, the ladder, the trees close to the rear bumper. Then he looked at me through the windshield and raised one hand like he was asking what I had seen. I did not try to explain the monitor. I just said the power cord had been pulled. That made him walk over to the pedestal. He kept his flashlight low and careful. The cord was still plugged in, but barely. The plug sat at an angle half out of the socket. Rainwater ran down the pedestal and over the black cable. The blue light on the surge protector flickered once while he was looking at it. He pushed the plug in with 2 fingers. The lights inside my RV steadied. "Probably loose," he called. I nodded because I wanted him to be right. Then he looked behind my rear tire. "Your blocks are crooked." I got out after that. Not far. Just onto the step, then the gravel beside the door. My shoes sank a little. The rain was lighter now, but everything smelled like mud and wet bark. The yellow leveling blocks were still under the rear tire, but they were not where I had put them. They had shifted back maybe 3 inches. Not enough for the RV to roll, not enough to make anything look dangerous. Just enough that the edges had left 2 clean tracks through the mud, like someone had pulled them and pushed them back. The man saw the tracks too. He stopped joking after that. His wife called the campground host. I do not know if she had a better number than I did, or if someone finally answered because more people were awake. 10 minutes later, a utility cart came down the loop with a yellow light blinking on top. The host was a thin man in a cap and a soaked sweatshirt. He looked at the power cord first, then the blocks, then the rear camera. The camera housing was wet like everything else, but the lens had one clean swipe across it. Not a full wipe, just one curved mark through the raindrops. The host touched the plastic mount with his flashlight, not his hand. "It's loose," he said. I asked if wind could do that. He did not answer right away. The mount had been turned slightly down and left. Not much. Enough to explain why the monitor showed the bumper and ground earlier. Not enough to explain the rest. I did not say that part. By then, 3 people were standing outside in the rain, and I had already decided I was leaving. The host offered to stand behind me and guide me out once it got light. I took the offer. I waited in the RV until dawn came in gray through the curtains. I did not turn the monitor back over. I did not look at the towel covering it. The screen under it had gone dark sometime before morning, or maybe I had stopped checking. At first light, I packed badly. Water hose, shore power, stabilizers, blocks. Nothing folded right, nothing wiped down. The man from the fifth wheel stood near the road with coffee in one hand, watching like he was trying not to look like he was watching. The host stood behind the RV and gave "Bomb," and gave hand signals. Real ones. I kept the driver's window down and used the side mirrors. I did not look at the backup camera. I had unplugged the monitor and tossed it into the passenger footwell, face down with the towel still over it. As I backed out, something under the towel flashed. I saw it from the corner of my eye. The host's hands were in my side mirror. Slow, left a little, straight, stop. The covered monitor flashed again. I did not touch it until I was out of the sight and pointed toward the campground road. Then I lifted the towel. The screen was on. It showed the back of my RV pulling out of the sight. From behind, the view was smooth, steady, and too far away to be coming from the camera mounted on my own rig. At the bottom of the image, the same text blinked. No reverse signal. The host knocked on my window and asked if I was okay. I said yes. I left without stopping at the dump station. At home, I took the RV to a repair shop. I told the technician the backup camera had been turning on by itself. I did not tell him everything. I only said it showed bad video and maybe had a power issue. He called me the next afternoon. The camera was wired correctly. The monitor had no battery, no internal storage, no wireless receiver. It should not have displayed anything while unplugged. He said that twice because I kept asking different versions of the same question. He also said the mount had been moved by hand. There was grit under the bracket where it had twisted against the rear wall. There was a thin piece of clear tape stuck under the edge of the plastic housing, folded over on itself like someone had used it to hold something small in place. The tape had dirt on it, and one gray thread. He put everything in a plastic bag for me because he thought I wanted evidence for a warranty claim. I threw the monitor away. A month later, I found the video I had taken on my phone. I had forgotten about it, or tried to. The file showed the unplugged monitor glowing in the cab. It showed the cord on the ground in the feed. It showed the white text. No reverse signal. The strange part was the timestamp on the monitor image. It was not the timestamp on my phone. It was part of the camera display in the lower right corner, small and blurry. The frame showing my RV already parked blocks down, cord connected and stabilizers lowered, was marked 6:18 p.m. I did not arrive at that campground until 6:32. I checked the reservation email. I checked the gas receipt from the station before the park. I checked because 14 minutes felt like the kind of difference a person could explain away if they tried hard enough. I still back up with the windows down now. If a screen comes on by itself, I unplug it. If it stays on, I leave. The man next door helped me level the RV before I even asked. I had just backed into the site and stepped out to check the rear tire when he came over with a small bubble level in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. He was maybe in his late 50s, gray beard, ball cap, sandals with socks, the kind of look you see in every RV park in America. "You're low on the left," he said. He was right. I was tired enough to appreciate it. The RV park sat behind a truck stop off the interstate, and I had been fighting crosswind for most of the afternoon. The place was not pretty, but it was full enough to feel safe. Long-term rigs with potted plants, flags on ladder mounts, a golf cart parked beside the laundry room, people sitting under awnings like they had nowhere better to be. The man said his name was Mark. He did not act strange at first. That is the part that makes the rest harder to explain. He was the kind of neighbor who knew every problem before you ran into it. He pointed out that the water pressure ran high there, so I should use a regulator. He told me the sewer cap on my site stuck if I turned it too hard. He said the laundromat machines ate quarters, but not cards. All useful things. He stood a little close while he said them, but RV people do that sometimes. They talk over hookups and storage doors and half-open compartments. Everybody is outside doing small chores, so privacy gets thin without anyone meaning it to. I put a second leveling block under the left rear tire. Mark watched, nodded, and said that would do it. "Don't forget your chocks," he said. I almost smiled. "I won't." He laughed like we already knew each other. After he went back to his site, I finished setting up. Shore power, water hose, surge protector, stabilizers. I did not hook up sewer because I was only staying 2 nights. I pulled the curtains on the big windows but left the door open while the inside cooled down. Mark's site was on my passenger side. He had an older fifth wheel with chrome trim, a folded camp chair, and a small outdoor rug that looked too clean for that park. His awning was out, but he was sitting just under the edge of it, not really facing the road, not really facing his own door, facing my site. I noticed it, then let it go. People sit where they sit. Inside, I made coffee, even though it was late. I had bought a bag of dark roast from a grocery store in Tennessee, one of those local brands with a brown paper label. I kept it in the cabinet above the sink. I had just opened the cabinet when Mark called from outside. "That's the good stuff." I stopped with the bag in my hand. The screen door was closed. The main door was open. He was sitting at his site maybe 20 feet away, mug resting on one knee. "My wife used to buy that brand," he said. "Hard to find outside Tennessee." I looked down at the bag. The front label was facing me, not the door. I turned it slightly, then looked back at him through the screen. "Yeah," I said, "it's good." That was all I gave him. He smiled and lifted his mug like a toast. Didn't mean to be nosy. It was the right thing to say. Normal enough, polite enough. I made the coffee anyway, but I closed the main door while it brewed. For the next hour, nothing happened. I ate leftovers at the dinette. I answered 2 texts. I looked up the weather for the next day and checked whether the laundry room closed at 10 or stayed open all night. Mark did not knock. He did not come over again. That helped. By the time it got dark, I had almost filed him under friendly campground guy. Then I went to pull the last kitchen curtain. Through the narrow gap I saw Mark's camp chair. It had been moved. Earlier it had faced the little outdoor rug under his awning. Now it was angled toward my RV, not directly at my door. That would have been easier to dislike. It was angled toward the passenger side windows, the kitchen and dinette windows, where the curtains did not close perfectly unless you tucked the bottom corners behind the trim. Mark was not in the chair. His mug was. Steam still came from it. I pulled the curtain shut and used a binder clip to hold the 2 panels together. A minute later from outside, Mark called softly. "Those clips work pretty good, don't they?" I stood still beside the window. I had not made any noise when I clipped it. I did not answer him. For a few seconds, I just stood by the curtain, with my fingers still on the binder clip. The RV was quiet except for the coffee maker clicking as it cooled. Outside, Mark's voice had come from somewhere near his awning, but I had not heard him walk back to the chair. I moved away from the window and turned off the kitchen light. That made the inside feel better, so I left it off. The next morning, Mark was outside before I was. I saw him through the small window by the sink, standing near the water pedestal with a short hose gasket in his palm. He lifted it when he saw me, like he had been waiting for the right moment to show it. "Your connection's weeping a little," he said through the screen door. "Nothing bad. This'll fix it." I opened the door but kept the screen latched. He held the gasket up. It was the right size. That bothered me more than it should have. RV people keep spare gaskets. RV people notice leaks. RV people help. I knew all of that, and I still did not like how ready he was. "I've got some," I said. He nodded. "Figured. Most people keep them in that drawer by the sink." I did not say anything. His smile changed a little, but it did not disappear. "At least that's where we keep ours," he added. I shut the main door after he walked away. The drawer by my sink was where I kept gaskets. It was also where I kept my keys at night, my flashlight, and the small folding knife I used for boxes and zip ties. I opened the drawer and looked at the contents like they might explain how he knew. Nothing had moved. That did not make me feel better. I spent the rest of the morning doing normal RV chores badly. I took trash to the dumpster. I checked the water connection. I walked to the office to ask about laundry hours, then forgot what the woman said and had to read the sign on the door myself. When I came back, Mark was sitting outside with his coffee. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Fine. You're a light sleeper," he said. I stopped on the bottom step. He looked down into his mug like the words had slipped out too easy. "I mean, your lights came on a couple times." I had turned the bathroom light on once around 3 in the morning. I remembered because I had kept it off until the last second, then pulled the little curtain over the frosted bathroom window before I used it. That window was small high and on the back half of the ERV. From Mark's chair, he should not have been able to see it. I said, "Yeah, couldn't sleep." He nodded like that was all he meant. Then he said, "That bathroom curtain's smart. That little window catches more light than people think." I went inside and locked the door. Not the deadbolt, just the regular lock. I did not want him to hear the deadbolt. I checked the bathroom window. The curtain was still pulled across. It was cheap white fabric on a tension rod, and one corner had come loose from where I tucked it the night before. Barely loose, maybe half an inch. I fixed it. Then I started checking the rest of the RV. The curtains, the entry window, the windshield shade, the passenger side window above the dinette. I looked for gaps and found more than I wanted. Nothing dramatic, just small places where fabric hung wrong or trim reflected too much. Outside Mark's fifth wheel had chrome trim along the lower side. I saw myself in it when I looked through my window. Not clearly, just a bent dull reflection of my RV and the space around it. Then I noticed my side mirror. It was turned out, only a little. I had folded it in halfway the night before, because the sights were close, and people walked between rigs with laundry baskets. Now it was angled toward the back half of my RV, not the road. I went outside with a rag and pretended to wipe rain spots off the window. Mark watched from his chair. I adjusted the mirror back to where it should have been. When I turned around, he called over. "Those mirrors never stay put, do they?" I looked at him. He smiled like he had only made a conversation. I went back inside without answering. I tried to stay busy after that. That was easier than sitting still and thinking about where Mark had been looking from. I took my laundry to the little room near the office. I bought a bag of ice I did not need. I walked the loop once just to see if there was another way out besides the main gate. There was not. The park backed up to a drainage ditch and a chain-link fence. The only road out went past the office, then through a gate they locked at 10. The woman at the desk had already told me the code sometimes failed if it rained too hard. She had said it like a joke. By late afternoon, I had decided to leave the next morning. That felt reasonable. Not panicked, not rude, just early. Mark waved when I came back from the laundry room. I lifted one hand and kept walking. He called out storms supposed to roll in around midnight. I said I saw. Gate sticks when it gets wet. I stopped because that was almost the same thing the woman at the office had said. Mark took a sip from his mug. Same mug. I never saw him drink anything else. Just saying, he said. Wouldn't want you trying to pull out in the dark. I went inside and shut the door. For the next few hours, I kept everything closed. Curtains clipped, bathroom window covered, entry shade down. I even put a towel over the little glass panel in the door. It made the RV feel smaller, but it was better than feeling watched. Around 8, I stepped outside to check the water hose before the temperature dropped. There was a note on the bottom step, a yellow sticky note damp at the corners. Your left rear block is slipping. I looked toward Mark's site. His chair was empty. His fifth wheel was dark except for one small light near the steps. I crouched by my rear tire. The left rear leveling block had shifted. Not much, maybe half an inch. Enough that the tire was no longer centered on it. Enough that someone familiar with RVs would notice. That was not the part that bothered me. To see it, Mark would have had to walk behind my RV past the storage compartment, close enough to look down under the tire. It was not visible from his chair. It was not visible from the road unless you knew exactly where to stand. I fixed the block fast. When I stood up, Mark was at the edge of his awning. I was going to move it for you, he said. Didn't want to touch your rig. I held the muddy block in both hands. Please don't, I said. It came out sharper than I meant. He raised both palms. Of course, just trying to help. There was nothing in his voice that I could point to. No anger, no threat. If someone had been listening, I would have sounded like the problem. I rinsed the block with the outside spigot and went back in. After that, I set a trap that felt childish even while I was doing it. I tore a thin strip of blue painter's tape and stuck it across the joint of my passenger side mirror. Half on the mirror arm, half on the mount. If the mirror moved, the tape would tear. Then I locked the door and turned off every light except the one over the sink. 20 minutes later, I checked through the curtain. The tape was broken. The mirror was angled outward again. Not much, just enough to catch the side of my RV and the back window near the bed. I did not go outside. I took a picture through the glass. Then I took a picture of the mirror from inside, where you could see the broken blue tape hanging in 2 pieces. Outside, Mark's chair was still empty. His awning light was off, but there was one red dot in the dark under it. A cigarette maybe, or a small radio light. It stayed in the same place for a long time. Facing my bedroom window, I stood there until my legs started to ache. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Just one line. Block looks better now. I did not answer the text. I did not even save the number. I took a screenshot, turned my phone face down on the dinette, and sat there for a while, listening to the rain start again. It was not heavy yet, just a steady tapping on the roof and awning rail. Mark's sight stayed dark. The red dot under his awning was gone. I slept in pieces. Every time I woke up, I checked the door first. Then the window over the dinette. Then the mirror outside where the broken blue tape hung in 2 small strips. Once around 3 in the morning, I heard something metal click near the storage bay. I did not get up to check. I was done giving him reasons to know where I was. By 6, the sky was gray. I packed before coffee. Water hose first, shore power, surge protector, stabilizers. I left the sewer cap alone because I had never hooked up. The left rear block had shifted again, but less than before. I kicked it loose with my boot and threw it into the storage compartment without wiping it down. Mark did not come outside. His chair was still under the awning, turned toward my RV. The mug sat on the little side table beside it. I walked to the office before I pulled out. The woman at the desk was counting quarters from the laundry machines. She looked up like she expected a complaint about a dryer. I told her the man in the site next to mine had been making me uncomfortable. I tried to say it lightly. That is embarrassing now, but I did. I said he was probably just being friendly, but he seemed to know things he should not know. I mentioned the mirror. I mentioned the note. I did not mention the text at first. She asked what site. I told her. She frowned and turned to the computer. Then she looked at the paper map taped to the counter. That site's supposed to be empty, she said. I waited for her to explain. She clicked again. Reservation starts Friday. It's occupied, I said. She looked through the office window toward the loop, but you could not see that far from there. Maybe the owner came in early, she said. The way she said it did not sound convincing. I showed her the screenshot of the text. She read it once, then looked at the number. Her face changed in a small way. Not enough to make a scene, enough that I saw it. Do you know that number, I asked? She said no, too fast. Then she said she would have someone check the site. I did not want to wait for someone. I went back to my RV. Mark's site looked different when I returned. Not empty, just unfinished. His chair was still there, but the outdoor rug had been rolled halfway. The water hose was gone, the sewer hose was gone. The fifth wheel door was shut, and all the blinds were closed. The little table with the mug had been moved closer to the steps. The mug was empty now. I did not see Mark. I did not call out. I finished packing, got in the driver's seat, and pulled forward slowly. As I passed his site, I made myself look straight ahead. That lasted until I reached the curve near the dumpsters. Then I checked the side mirror. Mark was standing beside his fifth wheel. He was not waving. He was holding his coffee mug with both hands, watching me leave. I drove out through the gate and did not stop until I reached the truck stop across the road. There in daylight, with semis idling around me and people going in and out for coffee, I checked the text again. The number was gone. Not blocked, not deleted from my phone. The message thread was still there, but where the number had been at the top, it only said unknown sender. I took another screenshot. Then I drove home. The inspection mirror turned up 2 days later. I was unloading the storage bay on the passenger side because everything inside had gotten muddy. The leveling blocks were in the back corner. The water filter had rolled under the folding table. A bungee cord was hooked to nothing. Behind the blocks, wedged against the inside wall of the compartment, was a small chrome inspection mirror, the kind mechanics use to see behind engines. Round mirror, thin metal handle, a little swivel joint near the head. It was not mine. I picked it up with a paper towel. On the handle there was a strip of white tape. Written on it in black marker were 3 words: site next door. I stood there with the storage bay open and the mirror in my hand. The chrome face was dusty, but not enough to hide the scratches around the edge. It had been used. The hinge was loose. There was a faint brown smear on the handle that looked like old coffee. I checked the compartment lock. No damage. I checked the other storage doors. Nothing. For a week I kept the inspection mirror in a plastic freezer bag on my workbench. I told myself I might need it if I decided to report what happened. I never did. I still had no real name, no plate, no proof he had put it there, no proof he was even supposed to be in that site. Eventually I threw it away. That was a mistake. I know that because sometimes when I park at a campground, now I still catch myself looking at the ERV next to mine, checking for chrome trim, dark windows, side mirrors, anything angled the wrong way. I do not worry about someone standing at my window. That would be simple. I worry about someone sitting 20 feet away, smiling over a coffee mug, already knowing which surface gives him the best view in. The awning lights came back on 10 minutes after I turned them off. I noticed because my mother's shadow appeared on the curtain. She was asleep in the back of the RV with a small oxygen concentrator humming beside the bed. Nothing dramatic. Just one of those portable machines with a clear tube and a green light that made me check the outlet every time I walked past it. She had been cleared to travel, but only if we kept the drive short and the nights easy. That night was supposed to be easy. We had taken a site at an RV park near the lake, not fancy but clean enough. Gravel pads, a bathhouse with coated doors, a row of long-term rigs near the office, and weekend campers closer to the water. I picked the site because it had stable shore power and was close to the main road in case she needed anything. I set up before dark. Water hose, surge protector, shore power, stabilizers down, awning halfway out because there was a light rain coming in sideways. I left the awning lights on low while I got my mother up the steps and settled inside. After she fell asleep, I made sure the curtains were closed. Kitchen, dinette, door window, back sleeping area. The oxygen machine stayed plugged into the outlet near the bed, and I checked the cord twice so she would not trip if she got up. At 10:20, I turned off the awning lights from the control panel. The outside of the RV went dark. I stood there for a minute listening. Rain on the awning, the soft buzz of the concentrator, a TV playing low from a site somewhere behind us. Then I brushed my teeth, rinsed the sink, and locked the door. 10 minutes later, yellow light came through the curtain beside the dinette. I looked at the control panel. Awning lights were on. I stared at the little switch longer than I should have. It was not a touch screen, not an app, not something complicated, just a simple control panel near the door. I pressed the button. The lights went off. I waited. Nothing. I went to the back and checked on my mother. She was sleeping on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek. The machine was still humming. The green light was steady. I had just stepped back into the kitchen when the awning lights came on again. No click that I could hear, no movement outside, just that yellow wash sliding across the curtains. This time I did not turn them off right away. I stood in the middle of the RV and looked at the curtain over the dinette window. My own shadow was on it, clear enough to show my head, shoulders, and one hand hanging at my side. I took one step left. The shadow moved with me. I took one step back. It got wider. That was when I understood the real problem. The lights were not just annoying. They were behind me, throwing everything I did onto the curtain for anyone outside to see. I turned them off again. Then I checked the drawer where I kept the small awning remote. It was still there under a roll of tape and spare fuses. I took the batteries out anyway and put them on the counter. I checked the door. Locked. Screen latched. I looked through the small window near the steps. The space under the awning was empty. Wet rug, folding step stool, water dripping from the awning edge. I went back to the control panel. The lights came on while I was looking at it. My mother stirred in the back. I turned fast and saw her shadow appear on the sleeping area curtain. She was still lying down, but the shadow on the curtain was standing. I went to the back without turning on another light. My mother was still in bed. She had shifted a little, but she was not standing. Her hand was still near her face. The tube ran from the concentrator to her nose, and the machine kept that same soft hum steady enough that I held onto it for a second. I looked at the curtain beside her bed. The standing shadow was gone. Only the shape of her shoulder showed, now low and still, the way it should have looked the first time. I told myself I had seen the curtain move while I was turning. The awning light was outside. The fabric was thin. Shadows stretch, they bend. A person can scare himself with a bad angle. Then the lights went off by themselves. The RV dropped into darkness except for the green dot on the oxygen machine and the microwave clock in the kitchen. My mother opened her eyes. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "The lights are acting up." She blinked slowly, still half asleep. "Outside lights? Yeah. Turn them off." I did. I should not have said it like that. She heard the change in my voice. Her face tightened, and I hated that. She had spent the whole day trying not to be a burden. I did not want to give her something else to carry. I told her it was probably a short in the switch. She nodded, because she wanted that to be true too. I went back to the front and stood where I could see the control panel and the dinette curtain at the same time. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Rain tapped on the awning. The site next to us was quiet. Somewhere outside, a dog collar jingled once, then stopped. The awning lights came on again. This time I did not move. My shadow appeared on the dinette curtain. Then it sharpened. That is the part I remember most. Not the lights turning on. The way the shadow became clear after a second, like someone outside had adjusted the brightness until the outline was useful. I could see the shape of my head, the bend of my elbow, the phone in my right hand. I lowered the phone. The shadow lowered it too. I stepped sideways. The shadow followed. At the bottom of the curtain, the light made a thin, bright line along the floor. Through that line, I could see wet gravel outside, just a sliver of it. Nobody's shoes, no movement, only yellow light and rain. I turned the awning lights off. They stayed off for maybe 30 seconds. Then they came back. I walked to the sink. My shadow crossed the curtain. I walked to the cabinet. The shadow crossed the curtain again. I crouched to pull a blanket from the lower drawer, and the shape on the curtain bent down with me. It was not just my shadow anymore. It was a map of where I was. I took a towel from the bathroom and clipped it over the dinette curtain, then another towel over the door window. I used chip clips, binder clips, anything I had. The RV started to look ridiculous inside, like I was preparing for a freeze instead of hiding from light. The towels helped, for a minute. Then the awning lights came on brighter. Not a lot, just enough. Light bled under the towel and around the sides. It caught the edges of cabinets and the curve of the counter. It put my feet on the lower wall in a thin, dark shape. My mother coughed in the back. I went to her. The sleeping area curtain had a towel over it too, but yellow light came through at the bottom. Her shadow was low on the fabric. Normal this time, her head on the pillow, one knee under the blanket. Then another shadow appeared beside the bed. Tall, still. I looked at the space beside her bed. Empty. I looked back at the curtain. The tall shadow was still there. My mother saw my face before she saw the curtain. What she whispered. I said, "Don't move yet." The tall shadow turned its head toward me. I did not let my mother sit up. I put one hand out, palm down, the way you do with someone crossing a street too fast. She froze with the blanket pulled to her chest. The concentrator kept humming beside her, small and steady, like it had no idea the rest of the RV had changed. The tall shadow stayed on the curtain. It was not sharp, not like mine had been. It was longer, thinner, stretched by the awning light and the towel hanging over the fabric, but it had a head, shoulders, one arm hanging lower than the other. There was no one beside her bed. I moved slowly toward the curtain. The shadow moved a little too, but not with me. It shifted the wrong way, like it belonged to someone standing outside the RV between the awning light and the window. I stopped. The shadow stopped. My mother whispered my name. I said, "It's outside." I did not know that. Not really, but I needed it to be outside. If it was outside, the door still mattered. The locks still mattered. The walls still mattered. I walked back to the front and turned the awning lights off again. The shadow disappeared. So did mine. The whole RV went dark except for the medical machine and the microwave clock. I stood there with my finger still on the button. The lights came back on before I moved. My mother made a small sound in the back. Not a scream. Worse than that. A breath that did not finish. I opened the cabinet under the sink and took out my flashlight. The exterior switch for the awning lights was near the storage bay just outside the main door. I knew that because I had used it before while setting up. A small black panel with a rubber button and a plastic cover that never sat quite flush. I did not want to go outside, but I also could not sit there pressing the inside switch while the light kept coming back. I unlocked the door and opened it only as far as the chain latch allowed. Then I remembered RV doors do not have chain latches. That was my house, not the RV. That bothered me more than it should have. I opened the door 6 inches and shined the flashlight down. The steps were wet. The rug was wet. No shoes, no legs, no one standing under the awning. I stepped onto the top step and leaned just enough to see the exterior panel. The cover was open. It had been closed earlier. I was sure because I had checked it when I brought my mother inside. I always checked outside switches when she was traveling with me. Too many things on an RV can get bumped by accident. The plastic cover sat lifted away from the wall. On the edge of it was one clean streak through the rain, like a thumb had wiped it. I closed the panel with the end of the flashlight. It clicked. I did not step down to the gravel. I did not look under the RV. I did not call out. I went back inside and locked the door. My mother was sitting up now. I wanted to be mad at her for moving, but I could not. She had the oxygen tube in one hand and the blanket in the other, watching the curtain like it might breathe. "Can we leave?" she asked. I looked at the outlet beside her bed. The concentrator was plugged into shore power. It had a battery, but not enough for a long night of driving and panic and whatever else came after. The park road was dark. The rain was getting harder. The water hose was connected. The stabilizers were down. I would have to go outside for all of it. "Not yet," I said. That was the worst answer I had. I called the office, voicemail. I called the after-hours number from the map. It rang until it stopped. I sent a text to the emergency number printed near the bathhouse code. "Need help at Site 14. No answer. The awning lights went off. Then the exterior panel clicked outside. Not loud, just a small plastic sound. The lights came back on. My mother looked at me. I looked at the door. On the curtain beside the bed, the tall shadow was gone. In its place, there was a dark gap in the yellow light near the lower edge right outside the window, as if someone had crouched beneath it. I moved my mother away from the window. Not far. There was not much room. I helped her sit on the edge of the bed and slide toward the inside wall away from the curtain. The oxygen tube pulled tight for a second, and I had to stop and untangle it from the blanket. She was trying to be quiet. That made it worse. I could hear her breathing because she was trying not to breathe too hard. The dark gap at the bottom of the curtain stayed where it was, low, still, cutting into the yellow light outside. Then the awning lights went off. The gap disappeared with them. I waited 3 seconds, 4, 5. I took one step toward the front of the RV. The awning lights came on. I stopped. The light held steady. I took another step. The lights clicked off. I did not understand it at first. I thought the switch was shorting, or the panel outside had water in it, or someone had their hand on the button and was messing with me. Then I raised my arm. The lights came on. I lowered it. They went off. My mother saw it too. "Don't," she said. I stood still. The RV was dark again except for the green light on her machine. I could see the control panel near the door. No one was touching it. The awning remote was still on the counter, with the batteries beside it. I reached for my phone and opened the camera. The lights came on before my hand got to it. I set the phone against the cabinet, pointed at the control panel, and hit record. Then I backed away slowly. Lights off. I lifted one hand. Lights on. The switch on the panel did not move. Nothing blinked. Nothing clicked inside. The light outside simply responded. I stopped testing it after that. There is a point where proving something is wrong does not help you. It only teaches you how wrong it is. My phone buzzed on the counter. The emergency number had answered. "Stay inside. Do not move around with the lights on." I read it twice. Then I scrolled up to my own message. "Need help at Site 14. That was all I had sent. No mention of awning lights, no mention of movement, no mention of my mother or the curtain. I typed back with both thumbs. "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "Campground emergency line." I called the number. No one answered. The text thread stayed open on my phone, bright enough to light my hands. I turned the screen face down. My mother whispered, "What did they say?" "Host is coming," I lied. The awning lights came on again. This time neither of us had moved. On the sleeping area curtain, my mother's shadow appeared low where she sat. Mine appeared near the cabinet. Both made sense. Then a third shadow appeared by the door. It was not tall like before. It was close to the curtain, clearer around the shoulders. The head tilted slightly, like someone leaning in to see past fabric. I looked at the door. No one inside. I looked at the little window beside it, covered with a towel, clipped at the top. light leaking around the edges. The third shadow lifted one hand, slow, not waving, feeling along the curtain. I picked up the heavy flashlight from the counter. My mother reached for my sleeve. I did not open the door. I did not go to the window. I walked backward until I was beside her bed, and then I sat on the floor with my back against the cabinet. I kept the flashlight across my lap and the phone in my hand. For the next 20 minutes, we did not move unless we had to. The lights kept testing us. If I shifted my foot, they came on. If my mother reached for water, they came on. If the concentrator hose brushed the wall, they came on. Each time our shadows appeared on the curtains. Small movements made large shapes. A hand became an arm. A bent knee became someone crouching. The RV made liars out of us. At 1:12 a.m., the phone buzzed again. Same number. Help is outside. Neither of us spoke. Outside, the awning lights turned off. Then something tapped to the exterior panel. Once. Twice. The lights came back on, brighter than before. On the curtain by the door, the third shadow stood with its hand pressed flat against the fabric shape of the window. My mother started crying without making a sound. I turned the phone over and typed one more message. "Are you at my door?" The reply came back after a long pause. Number. Then another message appeared. "Do not open for the lights." I did not open the door. My mother kept one hand on my sleeve until her fingers cramped. I could feel how hard she was holding on, but I did not ask her to let go. The message stayed on my phone. "Do not open for the lights." I read it until the words stopped looking like words. Outside, the third shadow remained near the door window for a long time. It did not knock. It did not move around the RV. It only stood there flat against the curtain, made out of yellow light and whatever was blocking it. Then the awning lights went off. The RV became dark again. Neither of us moved. Around 4:30, I heard tires on wet gravel. Not close at first, then closer. Slow, careful, heavier than a golf cart. A white beam swept across the ceiling through the gaps in the curtains. My mother tightened her grip on my sleeve, and I almost told her it was fine, but I did not know that. Someone knocked on the RV door. 3 normal knocks. Campground host a man called. Rangers with me. I still did not open it. I looked through the small side window after moving the towel only an inch. There were 2 people outside. One in a rain jacket with the campground logo. One in a dark uniform with a flashlight pointed down at the steps, not into my face. The awning lights were off. I opened the door with the chain of my own caution, one lock at a time. The host asked if we were okay. I said my mother needed power, and the awning lights kept turning on. That was the simplest version. The version a person could say out loud with strangers standing in the rain. The ranger looked at the exterior panel first. The plastic cover was closed when he walked up to it. He touched the latch with the back of his knuckle, and it popped open. Not hard, just enough pressure. The latch was bent. The host said water could have warped it. The ranger did not answer. He shined his light around the edge of the panel. There was a clean streak in the grime where my flashlight had pushed it earlier, and beside that lower down another mark. Smaller, like a fingernail had been used there more than once. He asked if I had been outside messing with it. I said only once from the step. He nodded. They checked the control panel inside. They checked the remote. They checked the shore power connection. They checked the breaker at the pedestal. Nothing looked burned. Nothing smelled hot. The host kept saying it was probably moisture in the switch. The ranger kept writing things down without agreeing. My mother sat on the bed wrapped in a blanket, watching them work. The oxygen concentrator kept running. That mattered more than anything else by then. When daylight started coming in, I decided we were leaving. The ranger said he could follow us to the office. The host said he would help pack the outside if I wanted. I said yes before he finished asking. I did not care about pride anymore. The awning would not retract at first. The motor pulled, stopped, pulled again, then stopped, with the fabric halfway rolled. The LED strip along the arm stayed faintly lit, even though the system was off. Not bright, just a weak line of yellow under the gray morning. The host frowned at it. That shouldn't have power, he said. He removed the small cover at the end of the light strip. Water dripped out, but not much. Inside, tucked along the edge where the plastic met the metal, was a piece of black electrical tape. Not factory tape, a small square folded at one corner so it could be pulled off fast. The ranger took it with gloves. Something was stuck to the adhesive. Pine pollen, a short gray thread. I knew the thread before I wanted to know it. Same color as the towel I had clipped over the dinette curtain. The host stopped talking about moisture after that. They helped me get the awning in. I disconnected the water hose while the host stood nearby. The ranger stayed close to my mother until she was settled in the passenger seat. I did not look back at the curtains after that. I did not want to see what shapes the morning light made through them. At the office, the woman at the desk looked tired and scared in a quiet way. She said the emergency texts had not come from their phone. Their line had been down since midnight because of the storm. She showed the host her screen like she needed him to see it too. No outgoing messages. No replies to my number. I showed them my phone. The thread was still there. Need help at Site 14. Stay inside. Do not move around with the lights on. Help is outside. Do not open for the lights. The ranger took pictures of the screen. Nobody said much after that. We left before 8. My mother slept most of the way home. I checked the outlet at every stop to make sure her machine charged from the inverter. I drove slower than normal. I kept looking at the side of the eerie RV in the mirrors, expecting to see that strip of awning light glowing in daylight. It stayed off. For 3 weeks I did not plug the RV in. Then my brother came over to help me clean it. He wanted to know if we were selling it. I said maybe. We pulled the towels down from the curtains. We emptied the fridge. We checked the storage bays for damp spots. Everything looked normal enough to make the story feel embarrassing. Before he left, he plugged the RV into shore powers in my driveway so the batteries could charge. The awning lights came on, only for a few seconds. My brother was standing by the garage when it happened. He saw it too. A weak yellow glow along the side of the RV, fading in and out like a bulb about to die. Inside, one curtain lit up, the dinette curtain. A shadow appeared on it, standing near the door. I was outside when it happened. My brother was outside. My mother was inside the house. There was no one in the RV. The light went out before either of us moved. The next day, I cut the awning light strip off the RV. I did not replace it. I left the wiring capped and taped, and I check it every spring, even though there is nothing connected to it anymore. I still do not like sleeping in a rig with outside lights near the windows. Not porch lights, not campground lamps, not anything that can turn a curtain into a screen. We did not pick that RV park because it was remote. That was the point. My wife had agreed to one more weekend trip if we stayed somewhere normal. Not a forest road, not a half-empty campground behind a gas station. Somewhere with an office that stayed open, late paved loops, other campers, and enough cell service to stream a movie if we wanted to pretend we were not thinking about old trips. This place had all of that. The sign out front was new. The office had warm lights in the windows. There were kids riding bikes near the laundry room, and a man walking a small white dog past the propane cage. It looked like the kind of park that charged too much because it knew people would pay extra to feel comfortable. The woman at the desk gave us Site 41. She said it was one of their remodeled back-end sites. New gravel, new pedestal, easy water hookup. Not a bad walk to the bathhouse. Then she handed me the map. I saw the old number before I wanted to. It was under the new printing, almost hidden by a gray block where part of the loop had been changed. The map had been updated, but not cleanly. A few old site numbers showed through like ghosts of bad ink. One of them was 38. Not circled, not marked, just there faint under the new layout. I folded the map before my wife saw me looking at it too long. The woman at the desk noticed anyway. We redid that section last year, she said. Drainage was a mess back there. I nodded. She tapped the map with one fingernail. You're nowhere near that. Site 41 is over here. I did not like that she knew which number had caught my attention, but I let it go. People who work campgrounds know their maps. They know which sites flood, which ones get complaints, which ones everyone asks about. I told myself that was all it was. My wife waited until we were back in the truck before she said anything. "You okay?" "Yeah." "You saw something on the map. Old site number." She did not ask which one. That was one of the reasons I loved her. She knew when a detail needed to stay small for a while. Site 41 was near the outer curve of the park, past the laundry building, and a row of long-term fifth wheels with plastic flowers by the steps. The site itself looked fine, level enough, wide enough, a little close to the rig on the passenger side, but not bad. I backed in slowly. My wife stood outside and guided me with her phone flashlight, even though it was not dark yet. We had gotten careful about that, more careful than most people probably needed to be. I put down the leveling blocks, connected shore power, hooked up water, and left the awning rolled in because the wind had started to pick up. My wife went inside and opened the roof vent while I checked the pedestal. Everything looked normal. That almost helped. Inside, I pulled the main curtains, then the dinette curtains, then the small shade over the door window. I covered the bathroom mirror with a hand towel and 2 clips from a chip bag. My wife saw it from the kitchen. "Still doing that?" she asked. I looked at the towel. Old habit. She did not push. We made dinner from a frozen skillet meal and ate it at the dinette while a family across the loop tried to start a campfire in the wind. Their kids laughed every time the smoke blew back at their father. A golf cart passed twice. Someone's TV was playing a baseball game loud enough that I could hear the crowd noise through the wall. It felt normal enough that I started to get angry at myself. Not scared, angry. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes from checking every window and every reflection in a place where everyone else is just trying to grill hamburgers. You begin to feel like the thing watching you is not outside anymore. It is the part of your brain that refuses to stop looking. After dinner, my wife took a shower in the bathhouse. I stayed behind to clean up. I rinsed the pan, wiped the counter, and glanced at the map again. Site 41 was marked in blue highlighter. The old gray section was behind it, farther back, on the printed page behind a thin line labeled "Old Loop Closed." I could still see 38 under the ink. I put the map in the drawer. Then I took it out again and folded it the other way so that number was not visible. When my wife came back, she smelled like campground soap and cold air. She said the bathhouse was clean, which felt like a blessing. We watched half an episode of a cooking show on her tablet. I barely followed it. At 10:15, I locked the door and checked the windows one last time. From the windshield through the narrow gap under the front shade, I could see the back edge of the campground. There was a low chain across an old gravel lane behind the remodeled sites. No sign, no gate, just a chain between 2 wooden posts, the kind people step over when they think rules are suggestions. Beyond it, the ground dipped into a darker section of trees. A bathhouse light reached part of the old lane. Not much. Just enough to show one weathered signpost standing where the park map said there was nothing rented anymore. The number plate was dirty. I should not have been able to read it from that distance, but the light caught it for a second. 38? My wife was already in bed. I lowered the front shade another inch and told myself that was enough. The first night did not turn bad all at once. That would have been easier to understand. It started with the television screen. We were not using the RV television. We almost never did. It sat black on the wall above the small cabinet, reflecting the room in a dull, warped way. My wife had her tablet propped on the dinette table, playing the rest of the cooking show, while I stood at the sink with a cup in my hand. In the black TV screen, I saw her at the table. I saw the lamp over the dinette. I saw the edge of the front shade near the windshield. Then I saw a dark spot near the kitchen window. Not a person, not a face, just a place in the reflection that stayed black while everything around it caught light. I turned toward the actual window. The curtain was closed. I checked the bottom edge. It was tucked behind the trim, no gap wide enough to matter. Outside, I could hear a golf cart somewhere on the loop and a kid laughing near the bathhouse. Normal campground sounds. I looked back at the TV. The dark spot was gone. I turned the TV face toward the wall. My wife looked up from the tablet. "What are you doing?" Glare. She did not ask from where. A few minutes later, she stood to get a sweatshirt from the cabinet by the bed. In the microwave door, I saw her reflection cross behind me. That was normal. The microwave glass caught everything in that RV. But another shape stayed near the dinette. Still, I turned around. There was nothing there except the table, the two cushions, and the folded map sticking out of the drawer because I had not pushed it in all the way. I shoved the drawer closed with my hip. The shape in the microwave door did not return. I cleaned the sink slower than I needed to. I was trying not to do the thing where I checked every black surface in the RV. I knew what that looked like from the outside. My wife had seen enough of it. Then light moved across the wall. Not headlights. Headlights sweep. This did not. It appeared in a thin strip near the ceiling, held there for 2 seconds, then slid downward until it touched the edge of the kitchen curtain. I turned off the sink light. The strip disappeared. My wife stood in the doorway to the bedroom, now sweatshirt in one hand. "You saw that, right?" she asked. I nodded. Neither of us moved for a few seconds. Then I went to the front and lifted the shade less than an inch. The old closed lane was still behind the chain. I could see the post with 38 if I looked for it, but nothing was moving there. No flashlight, no person, no vehicle. The light had come from somewhere else. I checked the side window by the dinette. Across the loop, one of the long-term rigs had polished chrome trim along its lower side. A pickup camper was parked beside it at an angle. Between them was a narrow view of an empty site I had barely noticed when we came in. Site 16. It was not near the old closed lane. It was part of the active campground. Clean pedestal, new gravel, no RV on it. A small solar path light stood near the edge of that site. It flickered in the wind. That could have made the strip of light. Maybe. I left the shade down and checked the door lock again. My wife sat back at the dinette, but she did not restart the show. For the next hour, nothing happened, except ordinary campground noise fading away. Doors closed. A dog barked once. Somebody laughed too loudly, then got quiet. The wind pushed at the side of the RV hard enough to rock it on the stabilizers. I wanted the whole thing to become boring again. At 11:08, my wife went to bed. I stayed up. I told her I was going to read, but I only held the book open in my lap. I was watching the side window through the reflection in the dark tablet screen. That is how I saw the light at Site 16 again. Not bright, just a small point near the pedestal. It did not move like a flashlight. It stayed low, then rose slowly like someone lifting something by hand. I went to the window and used 2 fingers to open the curtain a crack. Site 16 was empty. No person, no vehicle, but there was something white hanging from the utility pedestal. I stared at it until my eyes started to water. It was too far to read from where I stood, and I was not going outside. Not at that hour. Not after what that number on the map had already done to my head. I used my phone camera and zoomed in through the glass. The image was soft because of the screen and the distance, but the shape was clear enough. A parking tag. White plastic. Black marker. 41. I looked at our real tag. It was hanging beside the door where the office told us to keep it. Site 41. Dry. Inside? My wife called from the bedroom. "What is it?" I lowered the phone. "Nothing," I said. It was a stupid answer. She knew it was a stupid answer. But neither of us wanted the better one yet. I did not sleep much. My wife did not either, though she kept pretending. Every time the wind hit the side of the RV, her breathing changed. Every time someone walked on the gravel outside, I felt her shift under the blanket. The tag at Site 16 was gone by morning. I checked before coffee. I waited until people were outside. A man walked his dog past our site. 2 kids rode bikes toward the office. A woman in pajama pants carried a laundry basket under one arm and a bottle of detergent under the other. Only then did I step outside. Site 16 looked empty and harmless in daylight. New gravel, new pedestal, a picnic table with rainwater pooled on the bench. Nothing hanging from the post. But there was a clean spot on the side of the utility pedestal. A small white rectangle. The rest of the metal had dust rain spots and a little green pollen stuck to it. That rectangle did not. It was sharp around the edges like something had covered it during the night and had been removed before morning. I took one picture, then I went back inside before my wife could ask me what I was doing. We should have left then. I know that, but that is not how the morning felt. The park was awake. The office was open. The sun was out in that pale, weak way after rain. My wife stood at the counter eating toast, watching families hook up trailers and men rinse coolers at water spigots. She said maybe we go after lunch. I did not argue. Leaving an RV site is not like leaving a motel room. You do not just grab a bag and walk out. There is always another small job, another hose, another cord, another reason to wait until you are less tired and the wind is lower. I went to the laundry room because I needed something normal to do. It was behind the office in a low building that smelled like dryer sheets and damp towels. 2 washers were running. One dryer had a sneaker thumping around inside it. There was a change machine, a folding table, and a bulletin board, covered with Park Rules pizza coupons and a faded notice about quiet hours. Near the detergent machine was a stack of old campground maps, not the new glossy ones from the office. These were thinner, with the old loop still printed clearly on the back half of the property. I took one without thinking. Loop C was different on that version. The closed lane behind our site was open. The gravel road curved wider. The old numbers were easy to read. Site 38 was there, circled in pencil. I folded the map shut so fast that the woman at the dryer looked over at me. I pretended to check the price on the washer. When she went back to her phone, I opened the map again. Beside Site 38, written small in pencil, were the words I already knew. Better view from there. I did not say them out loud. I did not even breathe right for a few seconds. There was more pencil on the map, but not much. A faint line ran from Site 38 toward the edge of the page, then stopped where the old map ended. It did not point to another old site. It pointed off the printed campground into the white border. That bothered me more than the words. I folded the map and put it inside my jacket. On the bulletin board, the quiet hours notice had curled away from the cork at one corner. Behind it was another piece of paper mostly hidden. I would have left it alone if the corner had not shown the word assigned. I pulled it out. It was a receipt, old, damp at some point, then dried flat. The ink had faded, but the important part was still readable. Assigned Site 38. Under it, written by hand, 27. I held it for too long. The dryer sneaker thumped again. I put the receipt behind the quiet hours notice where I had found it. I do not know why. Maybe because taking the map already felt like enough. Maybe because the receipt felt like evidence from someone else's bad night and I did not want to steal it. When I got back to the RV, my wife was standing on the step. She looked past me toward the laundry room. "What did you find?" I handed her the map. She unfolded it on the dinette table, saw the circle around 38, and sat down slowly. Then she pointed to the faint pencil line running off the page. "That's not where 38 is anymore," she said. I looked at the new office map in the drawer. For the first time, I wanted both maps on the table at the same time. I reached into my jacket for the old map. The receipt was in my pocket too. I froze with my hand still inside. I had put it back on the bulletin board. I knew I had. But there it was, folded once damp feeling against my fingers. The old receipt. Assigned Site 38. Corrected to 27. My wife watched me unfold it. Neither of us spoke. Then she looked at the old map again. Under better view from there was a second line. It had not been there in the laundry room. Not his first time. My wife wanted to go to the office. I wanted to leave. Neither one of us moved. The 2 maps were still open on the dinette table. The old one was thin and soft from being handled too many times. The new one was glossy with bright colors and clean lines that made the campground look more organized than it felt. Site 38 was circled on the old map. Site 41 was highlighted on the new one. Site 16 was not marked on either. That bothered me. I found it on the new map and touched it with my finger. It sat on the inside curve of the loop between the long-term fifth wheel and the pickup camper. A nothing site, the kind you would forget as soon as you drove past it. My wife looked from my finger to the old map. "What are you doing?" "I don't know." That was true. I put the new map over the old one. At first it did not line up. The remodeled loop had changed too much. Some roads had been widened, some sites were gone. The laundry room was in the same place though. So was the office. So was the bathhouse. I lined those up. Then the road started to make sense. Not perfectly, enough. The old closed lane ran under the new outer curve. Site 41 sat where the map said it should. Site 16 shifted closer to the place where the old pencil line ran off the page. My wife leaned over the table. The color went out of her face before I finished saying anything. The old pencil line from Site 38 did not point at Site 38 anymore. It pointed through the new loop, toward the Site 16. I sat back. That was worse than finding the old number, worse than the tag, worse than the receipt in my pocket. Site 38 was not the thing. It was the angle. My wife whispered, "Don't say that." I had not realized I said it out loud. We spent the next hour packing without calling it packing. I put the dishes away. She folded the blanket from the bed. I checked the weather, then the gate hours, then the wind advisory. Gusts were getting worse after dark, and the road out of the park curved through trees before reaching the highway. We could leave before sunset if we moved fast. That was the plan for about 15 minutes. Then the sky opened. Rain hit the roof hard enough to drown out the TV from the rig next door. Wind pushed the RV sideways on the stabilizers. The awning was already rolled in, but the slide topper on the long-term fifth wheel across from us snapped and flapped like it was tearing loose. My wife looked at the window. I looked at the power cord outside swaying between the RV and pedestal. Neither of us said the obvious thing. Leaving right then meant going outside in that weather, disconnecting pulling blocks, and backing out past a site we both knew had been used during the night. So we waited. We turned off the inside lights before dark. I covered the TV with a sweatshirt. I covered the microwave door with a dish towel. I checked the bathroom mirror, even though it was already covered. My wife tucked the curtain bottoms behind the trim with the flat edge of a butter knife. We used one small flashlight pointed at the floor. It made the RV feel like a place people hid in. At 9:06, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Do not use the inside lights." My wife read it over my shoulder. I called the number. Nothing. No ring, no voicemail. The call just ended. I called the campground office. Busy. I sent a text back. "Who is this?" No answer. Outside, a vehicle moved slowly through the loop. I could not tell what kind. The rain made everything sound larger. Tires on gravel, a low engine, a stop near the dumpsters, then nothing. A thin bar of light appeared under the windshield shade. I had lowered that shade as far as it would go. The light found the gap anyway. It struck the cabinet under the sink reflected faintly in the metal rim of the stove, and put a pale rectangle on the wall near the bed. Inside that rectangle were two dark shapes. Me, my wife, sitting still at the dinette. She looked at the wall, then at me. "It knows when you move," she said. I started to stand. The light shifted upward before I was fully on my feet. Not much. Enough. I sat back down. The light lowered with me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo. It had been taken from outside far enough away that the ERV looked small and ordinary in the rain. Most of the image was dark. Our site, the side of our rig, the closed curtains. But two shadows were visible inside the pale rectangle on the wall, sitting at the dinette. Us. The caption under the photo was one word. Good. My wife covered her mouth with one hand. I did not move. Not because I was calm. Because the photo had been taken from Site 16 or close to it, and I suddenly understood that standing up would give whoever was out there exactly what they were waiting for. The new map was still on the table. The old map was under it. Rain shook the RV. The phone buzzed one more time. No photo this time. Just text. "You found it." I put the phone face down on the table. My wife reached for it, then stopped. Neither of us wanted to look at the message again, but the words were already in the room. "You found it." The RV rocked once in the wind. Rain slapped against the windows in uneven bursts. Somewhere outside, a loose piece of metal were knocked against another rig, slow and hollow, like someone tapping a pipe with a coin. I kept both hands flat on the table. "Don't stand up," my wife said. I know. I did not know. Not really. I only knew the last time I started to move, the light moved first. The pale rectangle on the wall stayed where it was. It was not bright now, just enough to show our shapes if we shifted. My shoulder, her head, the edge of the dinette backrest. Nothing clear enough for a normal person to want. That was the thing I could not get past. Whoever was outside did not need clear. They only needed enough. I picked up the phone without lifting it from the table and opened the camera. I slid it toward the window, slow, keeping it low. My wife held the old map down so it would not slide. I turned the phone toward the gap under the windshield shade and zoomed. At first, the screen showed only rain on glass. Then the image settled. Site 16 was across the loop, partly blocked by the long-term rig and the pickup camper. It looked empty. The pedestal was dark. The picnic table was wet and bare. The gravel pad had no tire marks that I could see, but the white tag was back. It hung from the side of the utility pedestal, just like it had the night before. Site 41. I did not say anything. I showed my wife the screen. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them again and whispered, "Call someone." That was when it became reportable in a way I could say out loud. Not a feeling, not a reflection, not an old number on a map. A duplicate tag with our site number had been placed on an empty site, and someone had sent us a photo taken from outside the ERV. I called 911. The call connected, cut into static, then came back. I gave the dispatcher the park name, our site, and the simplest version I could manage. Someone is outside the RV park site. They put a duplicate tag with our site number on another pedestal. They are sending photos of us inside. The dispatcher asked if we could see the person. I said no. She asked if our doors were locked. I said yes. She told us to stay inside, keep the lights off, and wait for a ranger or deputy. Her voice was calm in the trained way that makes you feel worse and better at the same time. While I was on the phone, my wife stared at the maps. After I hung up, she turned the old one so the laundry room light from the small counter lamp hit it at an angle. "There's more here," she said. I did not want there to be more. She pointed near the line that ran from Site 38 toward the edge of the page. The pencil was faint there, almost rubbed away. It looked like a note at first, then like a smudge. I took the flashlight and held it low. 3 words appeared under the line. "Corners still work." My wife pushed back from the table. Not far, just enough that the bench creaked. The light on the wall shifted. Outside, something changed position. Not footsteps. I would have liked footsteps. Footsteps give you a direction. This was only a small sound in the rain, a scrape from gravel that could have been a shoe, a chair leg, or the wind moving something that should not have been loose. The phone buzzed. Another photo. This one was not taken from outside. It showed the dinette table, our table. The old map on the bottom, the new map on top. My left hand near the corner, my wife's fingers still holding the edge down. The angle was from above and behind me. There was no one behind me. I turned so fast my shoulder hit the cabinet. Nothing. The bed curtain, the small hallway, the bathroom door with the towel still clipped over the mirror. My wife made a sound like she was going to be sick. The caption under the photo said, "Not the number." Then another message came before either of us moved. The angle. I put the phone down harder than I meant to. The pale rectangle on the wall brightened. Our shadows sharpened again. I understood then that we had been doing half the work for whoever was out there, covering one surface, leaving another, turning off the light, making the RV darker inside so the outside light could draw us better. I folded the old map. My wife grabbed my wrist. "Don't touch it." I stopped. The map was halfway folded, and on the back where there had been nothing before, there was a fresh pencil line. Short, dark. It connected 2 marked points. One was 38. The other was not labeled on the old map because it did not exist yet. On the new map, it was Site 16. My phone rang. This time it was the dispatcher calling back. A deputy was at the main road. A campground host was opening the gate. They told us to stay where we were and not answer the door unless the deputy identified himself. While she was talking, the white tag at Site 16 swung once in the rain. I watched it through the phone camera. There was no wind in that direction. The tag turned slowly until the back faced us. Something was written there too, but the zoom would not hold steady long enough to read it. My wife said don't. I did anyway. I zoomed until the image broke into blocks of gray and white. The writing on the back of the tag came into focus for half a second. Same view, then the phone lost it. Outside, the tag dropped. It did not fall like the wire broke. It was removed downward by a hand I could not see. The deputy knocked 5 minutes later. He did it the way the dispatcher said he would. 3 knocks, a pause, then his name, the county, and the last 4 digits of the phone number I had given them. I still looked through the side window before I opened the door. There were 2 people outside. The deputy stood on the bottom step with his flashlight pointed at the ground. The campground host stood a few feet behind him, in a raincoat holding a ring of keys and looking at the old closed loop like he wished it belonged to someone else. I opened the door. My wife stayed at the dinette. The deputy asked if anyone was hurt. I said no. He asked if anyone had tried to get inside. I said no. He asked to see the messages. I handed him the phone. He read them without changing his face. Do not use the inside lights. Good, you found it. Not the number, the angle. He took pictures of the screen with his own phone. Then he looked at the maps on the table. The old map was still half folded. The new map was still underneath it. My wife had one hand on the corner, not holding it down anymore, just touching it, like she was afraid it would move if no one did. The deputy asked where the old map came from. Laundry room, I said. The host looked at me. We don't keep old maps in there. He said it too quickly. The deputy heard it too. He turned toward him. The host swallowed. I mean, we shouldn't. Nobody said anything for a second. Then the deputy asked where Site 16 was. The host pointed through the rain. They left us inside while they checked it. I watched through the phone camera, not the window. I do not know why that felt safer. The deputy and the host crossed the loop with their flashlights low. They did not walk straight to the pedestal at first. They checked between the long-term fifth wheel and the pickup camper, then the back edge of the site, then the old chain across the closed lane. There was no one there. The tag was gone. The pedestal had a clean rectangle on the side, same size as the tag. The deputy shined his light over the ground, but rain had already worked on the gravel. There were marks everywhere, and no mark useful enough to matter. Then they went to the old loop. The host unlocked the low chain, even though it would have been easy to step over. I remember that because his hands were shaking. The deputy held the chain while he lifted it off the post, and the metal made a soft, wet sound. They walked toward the old Site 38. I could not see them clearly after the first few steps. The bathhouse light did not reach far enough, and their flashlights moved between trees and old posts. Every few seconds, one beam would catch the number plate, 38, then it would vanish again. My wife said stop watching. I lowered the phone. A few minutes later, the deputy came back alone. The host stayed near the old loop. The deputy asked if either of us had gone past the chain. We both said no. He asked if we had touched the tag at Site 16. Number. He asked if we knew anyone else in the park. Number. He asked if we had been in that campground before. My wife said no before I answered. I told him no too. That was true. I had never been to that park. The deputy looked at the old map again. What's this note mean? I did not ask which note. Nothing good, my wife said. The deputy did not smile. He told us we could move closer to the office if we wanted, or we could leave once the weather eased. The host had already offered to help us pull out in the morning. I said we were leaving as soon as it was light enough. The deputy said he would stay in the park for a while. That should have helped. It helped a little. After he left, my wife and I sat at the dinette without turning on the lights. The pale rectangle on the wall was gone. The rain softened. Somewhere across the loop, a truck door opened and closed. I heard the deputy's radio, once low and broken. We did not sleep. At dawn, the host came back with another man from maintenance. Neither of them mentioned the messages. Neither of them mentioned the old loop. They helped me disconnect water and shore power, pull the blocks, and back out of the site. I used the side mirrors. My wife stood inside the RV near the door with her phone in her hand. As I pulled forward, I saw Site 16 in the passenger mirror. Empty, clean pedestal, no tag. Then the mirror caught the old chain behind it. For 1 second, because of the angle, Site 16 and the old post for Site 38 lined up in the same slice of glass. It looked like one site. Then I turned the wheel and the image broke apart. At the office, the woman behind the counter did not charge us for the second night. She printed the refund receipt and kept her eyes on the screen the whole time. Assigned Site 41. That was what it said. No correction. No old number. I felt a stupid amount of relief seeing that. Then she folded the receipt and handed it to me. On the back, pressed into the paper from something underneath, was a pencil line. Not dark enough to read unless you tilted it. I tilted it. A circle. Then another circle. Then a line between them. I did not ask her about it. My wife saw it too. She took the receipt from my hand and folded it again harder. We left. The deputy called 3 days later. I was in my driveway checking tire pressure because I needed something mechanical to do. Something with numbers that meant what they said. He asked if I had left a map at the campground office. I said no. He asked if I was sure. I said I had the map with me. He was quiet long enough that I stopped checking the tire. Then he said he was going to send me a photo. It came through while we were still on the phone. The picture showed a campground map spread open on the office counter. Not the new glossy one, the old map. Site 38 was circled. Site 16 was circled. Site 41 was circled. There were pencil lines between all three drawn lightly, like whoever made them did not press hard unless they needed to. One line ran from 38 to 16. Another from 16 to 41. A third was shorter, crossing through the old loop and ending at a blank patch near the edge of the page. Next to the old words, there were new ones. Better view from there. Not his first time. Corners still work. Not the number, the angle. Under those in smaller writing was one more line. Left before he finished looking. The deputy asked if I recognized the handwriting. I said no. He asked if I knew what it meant. I almost said no to that too. Instead, I said, I think it means we should have left sooner. He did not laugh. After the call, I went inside the RV and opened the glove box. Our old map was still there. The one from the laundry room, folded the way my wife had folded it. I set it on the passenger seat and opened it slowly. Site 38 was circled. The first line was there. Better view from there. The second line was there. Not his first time. But the others were gone. No corners still work. No, not the number. No, the angle. No line to Site 16. No line to Site 41. I checked both sides. Nothing. That did not make me feel better. It meant the map in the deputy's photo was not the one in my hand, or it meant mine had changed back. I did not keep looking long enough to decide which answer was worse. I folded the map and put it inside the ERV manual between the page for the water heater and the page for winterizing the lines. I have not opened it since. We still travel sometimes. My wife only agrees to pull through sites now. I do not argue. I asked for them too. Not because they are easier to park. Because before I set the brake, before I plug in power, before I pull one curtain, I stand outside and look behind the windows. Not at the site number, at the angle. The worst part about an RV is not how many windows it has. It is how many ways light can get through them. A curtain can miss by an inch. A mirror can catch the wrong corner. A camera can show something before it happens. A neighbor can know what drawer you use. A site number can stop being a number and become a view. Some people leave a campground and never look back. Others keep the map, folded, hidden, still marked.